W5FC. ARRL NTS Net Nightly at 6:30 p.m. W5FC.
Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Skynet.
Does anyone need to use the repeater before we begin the 9 p.m. Skynet? This is Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima. My name is Brenda, and I'll be your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy. Our purpose is to help amateurs become more familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space in general. This net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your participation, comments, and suggestions for this net. Stations with priority or emergency traffic may enter the net at any time by using the pro sign, break, break, and your call sign. Is there any emergency or priority traffic? This is a directed net. Please do not transmit without direction from net control. That would be me. And stations are reminded to ID at the end of your transmissions. This weekly net operates on 146.88 megahertz with a PL tone of 110.9. Check-ins via Echolink are also possible using the W5 FC-R station ID or Echolink node 37247. Tonight's topics: astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio video links are available online. Go to www.w5fc.org right now for the complete list. Remember to tell others about this particular net. All amateur radio operators are welcome. You need only be a not be a member of any amateur radio club to participate. The net is 90 minutes long and is structured in several parts. 1. General announcements. 2. Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events. 3. National Space Society events. 4. Discussion topic of the evening. 5. What's up? 6. Space exploration and space history. 7. Constellation of the week. 8. Space launches of the week. 9. Recent astronomical discoveries. 10. Visible satellite passages over the next couple of days. 11. Astronomical Q&A. And 12. 73 round. All amateurs licensed to transmit on this frequency are invited to check in. So let's start with low power and short time check-ins. Please come now with your call sign, name, and where you're transmitting from this evening.
Kilo India 5, uniform, Alpha uniform, David on an HT in Mesquite.
Well, we only picked up one. Kilo India 5, uniform, Alpha uniform. David, welcome to the net. So let's go on with general check-ins. Please come now.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony in Dallas.
Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie X-Ray, Tom, Louisville.
Kilo 5, Mike Charlie Delta, Cody in Dallas.
Well, this is a slow start, but I'm sure it's going to pick up. November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony. Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie X-Ray, Tom. Kilo 5, Mike Charlie Delta, Tony. Let's go for some Echolink check-ins. Please come now.
November 5, Bravo, Bravo. Bill in Irving.
This is Kilo 5, Kilo Tango X-Ray, Kelly, in point. Okay, Echo Inc., we got November 5, Bravo, Bravo, Bill, and Kilo 5, Kilo Tango X-Ray, Kelly. Let's go for some more general check-ins, please. Come now.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Zulu, Bravo, Lima, Bill, Farmers Ranch.
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Juliet Hotel Alpha, Chaz, Mesquite.
November 5, Oscar Foxtrot, Flight, also in Mesquite. Kilo Golf 5, West Bravo 4, Alpha Zulu, WB4 AIZ, Echo Chuck in West Coast of Florida.
November Victor 5, Foxtrot, Virginia in Fort Worth.
November 8th, welcome. Heading WWR, Robbie Greenberg.
Okay, I'm going to need some fills. I have K5JDW John, KF5ZBL Bill, KF5JJ Chaz, November 5 Oscar Foxtrot Clay. The next one, it started with KG5 and I didn't get the rest. Would you please fill me in?
KG5, Whiskey Victor Lima, James Carrollton.
Thank you, KG5, Whiskey Victor Lima James. The next one started with the Whiskey Bravo 4 and I missed the rest. Would you please come back again?
This is Whiskey Bravo 4, Alpha, India Zulu, WB4AIZ, in near St. Petersburg, Florida. This is Chuck.
Whiskey Bravo 4, Alpha India, Zulu, Chuck. Thank you for checking in. Then we have November Victor 5, Foxtrot, Virginia. And the next one was an November 8, and that's all I copied. Could you please fill me in?
Yeah, sorry there. N8WWR, November 8, Whiskey Romeo. Thank you.
November 8, Whiskey Romeo. Your name, please.
Romeo, Oscar, Mike, India, Echo. QTH is Grapevine. In for the count. N8WWR.
All right. Thank you, Romy. Okay. Any additional check-ins from any mode, please come now.
Good evening. This is Alpha Golf 9er Sierra Golf, Antonio in Dallas.
Antonio, would you please come back with your call sign again?
Yes, sure. This is Alpha Golf 9er Sierra Golf, AG9SG.
Hey, Alpha Golf 9er Sierra Golf, Antonio. Thank you very much. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We have general announcements. Do we have any general announcements? These could be ham, astronomical, space, or of general interest to licensed hams. Please come now.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike, I'll start it off.
Great, November Tango 5, Tango 5, Tango Mike. Tony, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Brenda. I'd like to remind everyone that one of the biggest ARRL contests of the year is going on right now. Now, I'm not going to join in until sunrise because I'm sleepy and I don't have good low-band antennas. But if you'd like to learn more about the ARRL sweepstakes, where you get extra points for contacting people in every ARRL and RAC section, and there actually are some new sections in Canada, oddly enough, go to arrl.org/sweepstakes. Of course, if you've been on HF today, you probably noticed that every band except the work bands is dominated by people calling sweepstakes. But seriously, for more information, arrl.org/sweepstakes. I'm getting up early. Maybe you're going to want to stay up late. Who knows? And of course, we also just have some fun stuff here on the local VHF bands. We'll be talking about the Afterglow movie, which tonight is Beverly Hills. Wait, no, it's not 90210. No, it's 2010, 2010, the year we made contact. A genuinely decent movie. I don't know how I'm going to cope with talking about that, but we're going to talk about that at about 10:30, plus or minus 5 minutes on this for feeder. And of course, we have a great set of Sunday and Monday night nets too, with a meeting on the air tomorrow at 7, a Racy's training net at 8 p.m., and I think it's the second helping of ham fixins this Monday. So, great night, big contest. I hope you'll find time for that. And if you don't like contesting, well, we have great nets. NT5TM.
Thank you, Tony. Other nets, the AMSAT Radio Amateur Satellite Group has 2 nets available to Dallas residents on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Central. You'll need Echolink installed and be registered. You can find other net groups, you can find the net under groups and AMSAT. Also, a live audio link is available on their website, amsatnet.com. This net originates in Houston. Dallas AMSAT Net East Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, is every Tuesday at 8 p.m. on this repeater, 146.88 megahertz. HYP is the net control. All are welcome to check in. First Tuesday of the month is DARC Club Night, no AMSAT East night. Dallas AMSAT Net West is every Wednesday at 9 p.m. on the Arlington repeater, 147.14 megahertz, PL, 110.9 megahertz positive offset. So, let's see, Tony already told you about nets for the first next couple of days. We have, routinely, we have on Mondays, the first week is ham fixins, second week is M1, third week ham fixins, fourth week geek net, fifth week a surprise net. If we told you what it is, it wouldn't be a surprise. On-air participation is encouraged. And Tuesdays, AMSAT Net, AMSAT East, 8 p.m. Fridays, CERT City. Learn about emergency radio communications via CERT-trained amateur radio operators. Melissa, KI5GRH, is usually net control. Visit the most disaster-prone city in the universe every Friday. CERT City, all are welcome. Then on Saturdays, we have TechNet 7 at 8 p.m. and, of course, Skynet at 9. First and third Sundays, MODA, Dallas Amateur Radio Club meeting on the air. Every day we have the ARRL-Net National Training System, National Traffic System Training Net every night at 6:30 p.m. Central. All are welcome to check into any or all of these nets. Now, our second net tonight, or then after this, will be Afterglow. And I'd like to ask Tom, KE5ICX, to read what he wrote, the synopsis for this movie. Tom?
Why, thank you, Brenda. This is KE5ICX. I pride myself in giving as much accurate information as I can for the Afterglow movie net. So listen carefully, everyone. This week's movie is 2010, the year we made contact, from 1984. Floyd was blamed for everything that happened to the HAL 90000 B8 air-cooled supercomputer on board the Discovery spacecraft. HAL managed to kill the entire crew in hibernation, send Frank Poole on a one-way trip to Europa, and cheated at chess when playing the only remaining crew member, Dave Bowman. To Bowman, that was the final straw. Cheating was expressly forbidden on the spacecraft, and it would hurt crew morale if there was a crew left to have morale. Unfortunately, Bowman was instructed to, quote, go outside and fix the left turn blinker light, and Hal wasn't letting him back in. Something was wrong, and Dr. Floyd had to do something about it. Floyd decided to stop the malfunctioning monster, and that included the computer as well. Join us for the next fantastic cinema extravaganza, 2010, the year we make contact, tonight at 10:30 p.m. Back to you, Brenda, KE5ICX.
Thank you, Tom. I can't believe you actually chose a decent movie for us tonight. I'm so excited. I may have to try and find something bad to say about this movie, if there is anything. All right, Jazz, KFIJAJ, do you have anything on the Texas Astronomical Society?
Why, thank you, Brenda. Yes, I do. And Tom's description was so accurate tonight, as always. The last Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting was held last night on November the 17th, and the meeting was held at 7:30 p.m. in person only at the University of Texas, Dallas. It featured, the activity was the 22 items that were up for auction. Now, there is no Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas meeting in December because of an awards banquet. So, the next Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting will be held on Friday, January the 26th. 2024. And the meeting will be held at 7:30 p.m. in person and on Zoom, in person at the University of Texas at Dallas. The featured speaker is Ken Sherrock of the Denver Astronomical Society. He's going to be talking about the Chamberlain Observatory, probably going to take us on a virtual tour is what I understand. Saturday night public observing sessions have continued. Skynet was picked to be on Saturday night, so there could be an opportunity for live reports from the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas public observing sessions. So on the third Saturday, the stargazing is held at Cedar Hill. Do we have any ham radio operator at the stargazing that would like to make a report? If so, come now with your call sign. Well, we did have some cloud cover, and we do have the TASS picnic that's going on up in Oklahoma, so maybe that is the reason why we don't get anybody here. Check the TASS website, texasastro.org, for up-to-date information and details about meetings and public observing sessions. And I think we're going to give it back to our fearless leader. Brenda, it's all back to you. This is KF5JHA.
Thank you, Chaz. I want to pause now to check in another ham. Kilo Bravo 8, Delta Alpha Alpha, Catherine, is checking in on YouTube. Welcome to the net, Catherine. Next, we have National Space Society events and activities. November 5, Bravo Bravo. Bill, could you have give us a report, please?
Yes, I can. This is N5BB, now on RF. The National Space Society North Texas chapter meets on the second Sunday afternoon at 3:30 p.m. of each month in Irving. A normal location is Spring Creek Barbecue at Highway 183 and Beltline. Our November meeting was this last Sunday, the 12th, and our speaker was Dr. Pascal Lee, who is with NASA doing research involving humans living on the moon and Mars. It was a very good presentation. It was virtual. Our December meeting is going to be at a different location. It's going to be at the same normal time, the second Sunday of the month. That'll be Sunday, December the 10th. The time will be different. It'll start at 1 p.m. Location will be different. It'll be at my house in Irving, 1025 Lane Street in Irving, 1 block south of Highway 183 on MacArthur. This is N5BB. Skynet is in progress. It'll be a holiday party. So it'll be an invitation-only kind of event for local chapter members and invited guests. If you have any interest in the National Space Society, either nationally or locally, I'm the membership director, so I can help you with that, the local chapter membership director. You can send me an email at space@byrom.net, that's S-P-A-C-E, at byrom.net, or N5BB at ARRL.net. That's November 5 Bravo Bravo at ARRL.net. One more thing, we have a social event on the last Friday of every month. This month, it'll be this coming Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, November 54th Street Bar and Grill in Irving on 635. However, that particular location only closed a few weeks ago. So we're going to move it to the Cheddar's restaurant. That's Cheddar's, which is located on Highway 635 on the south side, right east of MacArthur in Irving. If you have any interest in that, that's going to be on the 24th of November. It's the last Friday of November, starting at 6 p.m. We call it the Space Rendezvous. If you have any interest, reach me as described earlier, N5BB. I'm also on QRZ. That's all I've got. That's the only upcoming events occurring in the short term here with National Space Society. This is N5BB. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next up, let's pause for check-ins. Anybody else want to check in now?
Go Golf 5, Julie, Mike Golf, Joe in Arlington.
Net Control, this is my pleasure to pick something out. And title tonight is, where did the NASA expression steely-eyed missile man come from? In the 2011 novel, The Martian, and its 2015 film adaptation, orbital dynamics expert Rich Purnell devises a maneuver to get NASA's Hermes spacecraft back to Mars and rescue marooned astronaut Mark Watney. Upon carrying out the maneuver, the crew of the Hermes sends a signal back to Mission Control stating, "Houston, be advised, Rich Purnell is a steely-eyed missile man." This colorful phrase was not the product of author Andy Weir's imagination, but has a long and distinguished history in American spaceflight. Within NASA, to be called a steely-eyed missile man is among the highest honors one can receive, indicating a unique ability to quickly and coolly solve complex problems under enormous pressure. So where did the expression come from? Well, it's not known with 100% certainty. It is thought to have emerged from the ballistic missile silos of Strategic Air Command somewhere in the late 50s and early 60s. For more than 4 decades, the missileers of SAC sat day after day in their underground control systems, waiting for the first signs of a Soviet attack and the signal to unleash Armageddon. It was an attack characterized, as the old combat adage goes, by long periods of boredom punctuated by moments of sheer terror, as the slightest error could easily bring the world to a premature end. But in the end, the steely nerves of SAC missile crews and their Soviet counterparts would, on more than one occasion, save the world from nuclear annihilation. And for more on this, check out our videos such as "That Time the Moon Nearly Started World War III" and the story of a Russian man who literally single-handedly saved the world during the Cuban Missile Crisis, with the video there aptly titled "The Man Who Saved the World." Given the top-secret military nature of SAC, the term steely-eyed missile man would not enter the public consciousness until the formation of NASA, which as a civilian agency conducted its operations in the full light of public scrutiny. Within the agency, the term was used sparingly, referring only to the absolute best and brightest. As Apollo astronaut Jim Lovell recounts in his 1994 memoir, Lost Moon, among the men in Canaveral blockhouse and the Houston control room, there was no greater tribute a controller could be paid than to describe him in the rough poetry of the rocket community as a steely-eyed missile man. There weren't many steely-eyed missile men in the NASA family. Werner von Braun was certainly one. Chris Kraft was certainly one. Gene Kranz was probably one, too. Those who didn't make the cut received an altogether different nickname, as legendary NASA flight director Gene Kranz recalls regarding colleague John Llewellyn. John was somewhat on the short-tempered side against those people that he considered pogues. Pogues are people that in his mind did not measure up at being steely-eyed missile men. This was particularly noticeable shortly after we moved into the Houston area, where we had a bunch of people who were trying to be flight controllers but really didn't have the background for it. I always had to keep John separated from our Pogues at the beer parties. While several NASA personnel have received the honor over the years, no single person is more associated with the title Steely-Eyed Missile Man than the flight controller John W. Aaron, who on November 14th, 1969, at the age of 26, almost single-handedly saved an entire Apollo mission from disaster. Apollo 12 was NASA's follow-up to the epic-making Apollo 11 mission, which first landed men on the moon. Crewed by Commander Pete Conrad, Lunar Module Pilot Alan Bean, and Command Module Pilot Richard Gordon, the mission's primary goals were to make precision landing in the ocean of storms, recover parts of the unmanned Surveyor 3 lander, and conduct 2 extended surface EVAs to collect geological samples. In short, to do everything Apollo 11 had done, but better. The weather on the afternoon of November 14th was rainy and overcast, with wind speeds to be encountered of 152 knots or 280 kilometers per hour, the highest of any Apollo launch. But mission control was unconcerned, and the countdown proceeded as planned, the rocket clearing the pad at exactly 4:22 p.m. At first, it seemed like another textbook launch, but then at T plus 36 seconds, observers on the ground saw a bright flash of light in the sky, followed by another 19 seconds later. Lightning had struck the rocket, traveling down the exhaust plume to the ground. Instantly, the mission was plunged into chaos. The massive electrical surge had knocked out all of the spacecraft, fuel cells, and instrumentation, causing alarms to shriek and the control panels to light up like a Christmas tree. Meanwhile, back on the ground, the steady stream of data cascading down the flight controller's screens had suddenly turned to garbled gibberish. With the steely calm of a career astronaut, Commander Pete Conrad wrapped his left hand around the abort handle, which, when pulled, would activate the Apollo spacecraft's Launch Escape System, or LES, and wrench the command module away from the Saturn V stack. Millions of dollars of rocket hardware would be destroyed, and America's second lunar landing mission would end in failure, but at least the crew would be saved. Back in mission control, as the flight controllers scrambled to determine what the hell had happened, one man stared at the garbled telemetry on the screen and felt a strange twitch of recognition. That man was John Aaron, the mission's electrical, environmental, and consumables manager. Aaron had seen the same garbled data appear when an obscure piece of electrical equipment, the signal conditioning electronics, had been disabled. The SEC was responsible for converting raw power from sensors into voltages the spacecraft instruments could read if it had been deprived of power. Aaron reasoned that this would account for the loss of telemetry. Thus, he proceeded to make the call that would soon become legendary: Flight Tri-SCE to AUX. A hush fell over mission control. So obscure was the SCE that neither flight controller Jerry Griffin nor most of Aaron's colleagues had ever heard of it. When asked by Gerald Carr, the capsule communicator, to clarify, Aaron repeated, "Turn SCE to auxiliary." Confused, Carr nonetheless relayed the command to the crew, who were similarly baffled. But then Alan Bean suddenly remembered the device from a training exercise. I reached up to the panel flip and reached up to the panel, flipping the switch. It worked. With the SCE now running on auxiliary power, the telemetry on the flight controller's screens suddenly returned to normal. After a few moments, Jerry Griffin determined that the Saturn V was still flying straight and true and made the decision to continue the ascent. Once in Earth orbit, the crew conducted a full inspection of the spacecraft, discovering to their relief that the lightning strike had caused no significant damage. Apollo 12 would go on to fly near textbook mission, having been snatched from the jaws of disaster by John Aaron's legendarily quick thinking. John Aaron would go on to distinguish himself once again during the disastrous Apollo 13 mission, when he helped solve a critical electrical problem. The oxygen tank explosion, which had crippled the spacecraft, had knocked out its hydrogen fuel cells, forcing the crew to shut down the command and service modules and take shelter in the attached lunar module. This meant that when it came time for the crew to power up the command module for re-entry, the only power source available would be the relatively small re-entry batteries. Aaron was thus tasked with developing a startup sequence that would allow the crew to run the most vital spacecraft systems without running out of battery power in the process. The sequence Aaron eventually came up with called for the spacecraft's communications and telemetry systems to be switched on last in the final moments before the capsule entered the Earth's atmosphere. At first, his plan was met with horror in the final moments before the capsule entered the Earth's atmosphere. Was met with horror as it meant Mission Control would only learn if the power-up sequence had worked once it was already too late to do anything about it. But as any other sequence would have caused the crew to exhaust their battery power long before splashdown, the plan was accepted. And on April 17, 1970, the crew of Apollo 13 made a safe landing in the South Pacific. In the 1995 film Apollo 13, for the sake of narrative efficiency, Aaron's role is assigned to astronaut Ken Mattingly, played by Gary Sinise. Other inductees into the pantheon of steely-eyed missile men include computer engineer Jack Garman and guidance officer Steve Bales, who, in similar fashion to John Aaron, saved the Apollo 11 mission from a possible abort scenario. During their descent to the lunar surface on July 20th, 1969, astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin began receiving multiple 1201 and 1202 program alarms indicating that the lunar module's guidance computer was becoming overloaded with data. No matter what the crew tried, the errors kept appearing, leading Mission Control to worry that the vital landing radar might be affected, forcing the landing to be aborted. Garman and Bales, however, knew that the computer was designed to prioritize certain tasks over others and was simply suspending less vital operations to allow more vital ones, like running the landing radar, to proceed. They thus gave the go for the descent to continue, and 3 minutes after the last 1202 alarm, Armstrong and Aldrin successfully touched down on the lunar surface. It was later determined that the computer overflow had been caused by the LM's rendezvous radar being accidentally left on. Had it not been for Garman and Bales' decisiveness through knowledge of the spacecraft systems, the first lunar landing might have had to wait for another mission. A very different computer problem nearly aborted Apollo 14's lunar landing on February 5, 1971. Having separated from the command service module Antares, Commander Alan Shepard and lunar module pilot Edgar Mitchell were conducting the final checks of their lunar module Kitty Hawk when the computer began returning an abort signal. As no abort command had been given, Mission Control suspected that a small ball of solder had broken loose behind a control panel and shorted the switch. Indeed, when Shepard and Mitchell tapped on the panel with the pin, the signal briefly went away, only to return a moment later. Minor though it had first appeared, this problem threatened the entire mission, for if at any point during the descent the tiny solder ball drifted back into the switch, it would trigger an abort and cause the LM ascent engine to fire blasting Shepard and Mitchell back into lunar orbit. The landing could not proceed until the problem was solved, and as two astronauts impatiently circled the moon, computer engineers from MIT who had designed the LM's computer were called to find a solution. Among them was 27-year-old Don Iles, who immediately grasped the difficulty of the problem. Unlike in modern computers, the software in the Apollo guidance system was literally hardwired in by weaving cables in and out of metal rings, meaning the abort program could not be disabled or changed. No matter what the astronauts did, if the switch closed, an abort would be triggered. Apollo 14 appeared dead in the water, but then, in an inspired bit of lateral thinking, Iles came up with a clever workaround. While he couldn't permit the computer from triggering an abort, he would convince it that it was already in abort mode, preventing it from triggering the ascent engine. Racing against the clock, Iles wrote out a short string of instructions, checked over by his colleagues, transmitted to the crew, and entered by Mitchell into the LM computer with just minutes to spare. Then, as Mission Control held its breath, Shepard and Mitchell fired the LM descent engine. Despite some carefully timed maneuvers to get around the programming changes, the descent went smoothly, and thanks to Don Iles' elegant software patch, Shepard and Mitchell became the fifth and sixth men to walk on the moon. These are just a handful of the numerous steely-eyed missile men and women whose quick thinking and coolness under pressure helped make possible some of NASA's greatest triumphs. Their stories, so often forgotten, remind us that while astronauts may get all the glory, they wouldn't have gotten far if it weren't for the brilliant minds backing them up down on planet Earth. Okay, we had another check-in. Kilo Golf 5, Z Mike Golf, Joe in Arlington. Do we have any other check-ins now?
This is Whiskey Bravo number 4, Mike Foxtrot, India, WB4MFI, Ted, Dallas, low power.
Very good. We have Whiskey Bravo 4, Mike Foxtrot, India, and name is Ted. Thank you for joining. Okay, moving. We've got What's Up of Chaz, KF5JHA. Go ahead, Chaz.
Thank you, Brenda. This is Chaz, KF5JHA. We call this segment of Skynet What's Up because it's all about what's going on astronomically over the next couple of weeks. That would be slide number 1. Slide master, slide number 2, please. On November the 13th, the moon phase was new. So the current phase of the moon is a waxing crescent. Maybe you saw it between clouds this evening. On November the 20th, the moon phase is first quarter. On November the 21st, the moon is at perigee, which is a point in the moon's orbit that is closest to the Earth at a distance of 369,818 kilometers. The moon is full on November the 27th. The moon is at third quarter on December the 4th. Also, on December the 4th, the moon is at apogee, which is a point in the moon's orbit that is furthest from the sun, furthest from the Earth at a distance of 404,346 kilometers. Slide master, slide number 3, please. Okay, I think I got rid of the frog in my throat. On November the 17th and 18th was the Leonid meteor shower peak, but actually it's pretty much at its maximum right now. This meteor shower can have between a couple of dozen to over 400 meteors per hour just before dawn. You can get more information about meteors and meteor showers at the International Meteor Organization, IMO.net, or the American Meteor Society at amsmeteors.org. Slide Masters, slide number 4, please. On November the 20th, the Moon and Saturn are in conjunction in the southern evening sky. They're pretty high in the southern sky. Slide Masters, slide number 5. On November the 20th and 21st, the Alpha Monoceros meteor shower peaks. This meteor shower can have, maybe half a dozen or so meteors, but occasionally they're at storm levels at over 400 meteors per hour. Now, what are we going to get this year? I have no idea until after it happens. So once again, you get more information about meteors and meteor showers at imo.net or amsmeteors.org. Slide Masters, slide number 6. On November the 21st, the Moon and Neptune are in conjunction in the evening sky. Now, you'll need to get a telescope and use it to find Neptune. Neptune is not visible to the naked. November the 24th, we'll have an opportunity to see the series of lunar encounters beginning with the conjunction of the Moon and Jupiter. That's on November the 24th. Slide Master, slide number 8. On November the 25th is the conjunction of the Moon and the planet Uranus. That's just the very next night. So November 24th, the Moon and Jupiter. On November 25th, conjunction of Moon and Uranus. Now, you'll need to have at least a pair of binoculars to see Uranus. If you're very sharp-eyed and far away from the city lights, you might be able to see it naked eye, but just barely. But a pair of binoculars would help. Telescope would even be better. Slide Master, slide number 9. And the next night, on November the 26th, the Moon and the star cluster of the Pleiades, also known as M45, will be in conjunction in the eastern evening sky. It'll make a great view for just the naked eye or even people that want to take some photographs. Slide Master, slide number 10, please. Now remember that we have another solar eclipse coming up in about 6 months. A solar eclipse is when the Moon is in between the Earth and the Sun, and for a very few lucky people on the Earth, the Moon blocks some or all of the Sun from our view. Slide Master, slide number 11. On April the 8th, 2024, is a total solar eclipse for us right here in North Texas. From Brookhaven campus of Dallas College, the Sun will be completely blocked from our view for about 3 minutes and 20 seconds. This varies depending on your location in the Metroplex. In fact, parts of Tarrant County won't see the total eclipse. Interesting. But during the time called totality, you'll be able to see the stars in the sky, just like it were evening twilight. It's a really eerie effect. The next total solar eclipse visible from North Texas after this one will be on July the 9th, the year 2317. So this total solar eclipse is a very big deal because it only happens once every 300 years in North Texas. We'll have more on that later on. And this is KF5, JJ, and this is Skynet. Slide Master, slide number 12, please. Once again, the next Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting will be held on January the 26th, 2024 at 7:30 p.m. in person at the University of Texas at Dallas, and also held on Zoom. The featured speaker is Ken Shurock, Denver Astronomical Society, and he'll be taking us on a virtual tour of Chamberlain Observatory. And public observing sessions have continued. Tonight was supposed to be held at Cedar Hill. Not sure if it was because we did have partly cloudy skies, but might not have happened because, well, there was the TAS picnic up in Oklahoma. Okay. More information can be found at texasastro.org for up-to-date information. Now, Slide Master, slide number, what are we up to? Number 13. Do you have any out there questions in Radio Land, or need a fill, or maybe just have a general astronomy question? Come now with your call sign if you have a question or need a fill. Oh, all of you out there must be shy, just like I am. Slide Master, slide number 14. So as the moon waned last week, so do these words for this segment of Skynet. Stay safe, keep well, pray for our world. It's the only one where humans live. And until next time, actually I'll be doing another segment on Skynet in a few moments. Keep looking up so you know what's up. And this is KF5JHA, Backdoor Net Control. Brenda, it's back to you.
Thank you, Chaz. This is Steely B50ZL. And I realized I was remiss in giving credit to the article that I read about the steely-eyed missile men. This is from a website called Today I Found Out. And the author was Gilles Messier, Gilles, and Messier, just like it's supposed to sound, be. So my apologies for that. I do like to give credit where it is due. Next up, space exploration and space history. I'm going to call on Kelly, K5KTX. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you, Brenda. This is K5KTX. Good evening, everyone. Well, as of last Saturday, November the 11th, NASA scientists have entered a period in which the Earth and Mars are on opposite sides of the Sun. Called Mars Solar Conjunction, this phenomenon happens every 2 years. NASA must hold off sending commands to its Mars fleet for 2 weeks. The mission's paused because hot ionized gas expelled from the Sun's corona could potentially corrupt radio signals sent from Earth to NASA's Mars spacecraft, leading to unexpected behaviors. That's not to say that those robotic explorers are on holiday. NASA's Perseverance and Curiosity rovers will monitor changes in surface conditions, weather, and radiation as they stay parked. Although momentarily grounded, the Ingenuity Mars helicopter will use its color camera to study the movement of sand, which poses an ever-present challenge to Mars missions. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and the Odyssey Orbiter will continue imaging the surface, and MAVEN will continue collecting data on interactions between the atmosphere and the Sun. In space history this week, on November the 14th, 1969, Brenda mentioned this a little bit earlier in her presentation, but in case you just joined us, you'll get to hear it again. So November 14th, 1969, Apollo 12 launched from Kennedy Space Center with astronauts Charles Pete Conrad, Richard Gordon, and Alan Bean. Only 36 seconds after launch, ground control lost contact with flight telemetry data. Another 16 seconds and contact broke again. The Saturn V rocket had just been struck by lightning twice. The Saturn V rocket itself was largely unaffected and continued on the planned path to orbit. But the command module electrical systems were tripped offline, and the crew would have been in real trouble once they got to orbit if it weren't for the quick thinking of 26-year-old John Aaron at Mission Control. Aaron knew that changing the position of a single switch, the Signal Conditioning Equipment, or SCC switch, would restore command module power. Approximately 50 seconds after his screen had first scrambled, he calmly issued a suggestion to his Mission Control colleagues. Try SCE to aux. After reaching orbit, Mission Control and the crew found no permanent damage and proceeded on with their mission, the second human landing on the Moon. Also on November the 14th, back in 1971, Mariner 9 successfully entered Mars orbit, beating the Soviet Mars 2 spacecraft, which had an 11-day head start to become the first spacecraft to orbit another planet. After the occurrence of dust storms on the planet for several months following its arrival, the orbiter managed to send back clear pictures of the surface. Mariner 9 successfully returned 7,329 images and mapped 85% of Mars' surface over the course of its mission, which concluded in October of 1972. November 16th, 1973, the third and final Skylab crew launched. Astronauts Jerry Carr, Bill Pogue, and Ed Gibson flew to NASA's orbiting workshop, for a record-breaking 84-day mission. The mission offered scientists the chance to study processes on Earth as well as in space over an extended period of time. The crew performed dozens of experiments during their 1,214 orbits. The station was actually the upper stage of a Saturn rocket, converted into living and working space for the astronauts on board. The station's orbit deteriorated in 1979. Also on November 16th, 1 year ago, on November 16th, 2022, Artemis 1 was launched. Can't believe it's been a whole year now. Artemis 1 was launched on an uncrewed lunar orbital test flight. The mission lasted 25 days, 10 hours, and 55 minutes. As the first major spaceflight of NASA's Artemis program, Artemis 1 marked the agency's return to lunar exploration after the conclusion of the Apollo program 5 decades earlier. It was the first integrated flight test of the Orion spacecraft and Space Launch System, or SLS, rocket, and its main objective was to test the Orion spacecraft, especially its heat shield, in preparation for subsequent Artemis missions. Artemis 1 launched from Launch Complex 39B at Kennedy Space Center. After reaching Earth orbit, the upper stage carrying the Orion spacecraft separated and performed a translunar injection before releasing Orion and deploying 10 CubeSat satellites. Orion completed one flyby of the moon on November 21st, entered a distant retrograde orbit for 6 days, and completed a second flyby of the moon on December the 5th. The Orion spacecraft then returned and re-entered the Earth's atmosphere with the protection of its heat shield, splashing down in the Pacific Ocean on December the 11th. About that, I got a little tickle in my throat. This is K5KTX. The Artemis mission aims to certify Orion and the Space Launch System for crewed flights, beginning with Artemis 2, which is scheduled to perform a crewed lunar flyby in 2024. We'll see if that happens. After Artemis 2, Artemis 3 will involve a crewed lunar landing, the first in 5 decades since Apollo 17. November 17, 1967, Surveyor 6 made history by becoming the first spacecraft to take off from the moon. Surveyor 6 had landed on the moon in the Sinus Medii region on November 10th, the fourth successful lunar landing in the Surveyor program. On November 17th, its engines were fired for 2.5 seconds, allowing the lander to hop across the lunar surface 2.4 meters to the west. This hop provided new information on the effects of firing rocket engines on the moon, leading to the success of the Apollo missions. Also on November 17, 1970, the USSR landed the first roving space probe on the moon. The rover, known as Lunokhod 1, was delivered to the moon by Luna 17. Lunokhod 1 landed in the Sea of Rain on the lunar surface and was manually operated under the control of several Soviet drivers on Earth. The mission was officially declared complete on October 4, 1971. However, the laser reflectors on the rover still work and were used in 2010 to pinpoint the location of Lunokhod 1. On this date, November 18th, 10 years ago in 2013, the Mars Atmospheric and Volatile Evolution, or MAVEN mission, launched to study the Martian atmosphere and climate. Specifically, the spacecraft set out to learn how Mars lost most of its atmosphere and water to space, resulting in today's Martian climate. On April 5th, 2019, the navigation team completed a 2-month aerobraking maneuver to lower MAVEN's orbit and enable it to better serve as a communications relay for current landers, as well as Mars Perseverance. The spacecraft is continuing its science mission as well, with all instruments still operating and with enough fuel to last at least until 2030. finally tonight, we have several astronaut birthdays over the last week, starting with November the 12th, 1937, Richard Truly, who was part of 3 Space Shuttle approach and landing tests. He was also on Space Shuttle missions STS-2 and 8. November 14th, 1930, Ed White, who was on Gemini 4 and unfortunately died during the Apollo 1 fire. Also on November 14th, 1933, Fred Hayes was, of course, a part of Apollo 13. And if you, any of you are part of the Space Tipsters Facebook page on Facebook, he's pretty active over there. He talks to people all the time, so you might want to check it out if you're not a member of that group. Also, November 14th, 1956, Ken Bowersox, who was Space Shuttle missions STS-50, 61, 73, 82, and 113 as part of Expedition 6. November 15th, 1959, Timothy Creamer, who was part of Expeditions 22 and 23. November 16th, 1950, Carl Meade, who was on Space Shuttle missions STS-38, 50, and 64. November 17th, 1944, John David Bartow, Space Shuttle mission STS-51F. November 18th, 1923, Alan Shepard, who was on Mercury Redstone 3 and Apollo 14. November 18th, 1929, William J. Knight, who was on, did several X-15 flights, and he was one of only 5 X-15 pilots who earned their astronaut wings due to the height of his flight. November 18th, the altitude of his flight. November 18th, 1951, Mark Brown, who was part of Space Shuttle missions STS-28 and 48. And that's all I've got this evening, Brenda. I will send it back to you. This is K5KTX.
Thank you, Kelly. This is WB50ZL. Do we have any more check-ins now?
Golf 5, Bravo Zulu Whiskey J, no effort.
KA1BIK with you out of Fort Worth.
Okay, we have KO5BZWJ, and the next one, please come back with both your call sign and your name.
KA1BIK, Jeff out of Fort Worth.
Okay, Kilo Alpha 1, Bravo India Kilo. Jeff, welcome to the net. All right, next we have Chaz again with Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week. Go ahead, Chaz.
Thank you, Brenda. This is slide number 15, please, Mr. Slide Master. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week is named in honor of Silent Key Carolyn, KC5OZT. Carolyn contributed to Skynet each week almost from its beginning in 2012 until May of 2019 with a detailed look at one particular constellation each week. Now, since there's about 52 easily visible constellations, Carolyn covered the entire sky as seen over North Texas in a year. In her honor, we've continued that tradition of a constellation per week and named this segment after her. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week this week is actually 2. Sculptor, the Sculptor's Workshop, and Phoenix, a very special bird. Speaking of birds, a little bird told me that the Cedar Hill observing session stargazing tonight was canceled. The reason why I called her a little bird, because, well, she's a birder. Isn't that right, Kelly? Slide Master, slide number 16. the jokes of the week, the most important part of Skynet. Well, at least I think it's a little bit of importance to Skynet. All right, did you hear about the explosion at the workshop where they make perfume? It blew up the old factory. Old factory? Get it? What kind of music do elves listen to in Santa's workshop? Well, this is an easy one. Come on, you can get this. How about rap music? Why did every tool in the workshop want to be with a sandpaper? Because it was super fine. All right, going on to Phoenix. What do you get when you touch a Phoenix? A bird degree burn. Bird degree burn? You know, Phoenix is a bird that rose out of the ashes. Okay. What's a Phoenix favorite snack? Firecrackers. I thought my days of misquoting popular idioms were over. But I'm like a phoenix rising from more molasses. I don't think I get that one. And this is KF5JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide Master, slide number 17. The constellation of Sculptor was originally named the Sculptor's Studio, or the Sculptor's Workshop. The original name was since been shortened to just simply Sculptor. Alpha Sculptoris is a very, Sculptor is a very dim constellation, and its brightest star, Alpha Sculptoris, is the brightest one, but doesn't have a proper name. Its magnitude is only 4.3. Lacks bright stars, and Sculptor is partly explained by the fact that the south galactic pole lies within the boundaries of the constellation, is therefore far from the plane of the Milky Way as possible, making it stellar density very low. Alpha Sculptoris is a blue-white giant star. It's a variable star. Alpha is located about 780 light years from the Earth. Now, R Sculptoris is a variable star. Richard Allen, in his book Star Names, says R Sculptoris is described as an intensely scarlet variable and is one of the most brilliantly colored stars in the heavens, with a period variability of magnitude 5.8 to about 7.7 in 207 days. R Sculptoris is a carbon star. That's what gives it red color to it. Slide Master, slide number 18. NGC 253 is the Great Sculptor Galaxy. It is sometimes referred to as the Silver Coin or the Silver Dollar Galaxy. It's discovered by Carolyn Herschel in 1783, and it's about 9.8 million light years away. Burnham's Celestial Handbook calls NGC 253 one of the most prominent in the sky for a small telescope, and probably the most easily observed spiral, with the exception of just the one Great Andromeda Galaxy, M31. Slide Master, slide number 19, please. NGC, which stands for New General Catalog, number 300, is a spiral galaxy. It's about 3.9 million light years away. It was discovered by James Dunlop and was included in his 1827 catalog. NGC 300 is often called the Southern Pinwheel because it resembles M33 in Triangulum, which is also known as the Pinwheel Galaxy. Stephen James O'Meara writes that NGC 300 is visible as a roundish glow in 7 by 35 binoculars from a clear, dark sky with unobstructed view of the southern sky. And this is KF5JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide Master, slide number 20. let's go on to Phoenix. The constellation lies in the southern sky. It was named after the phoenix, the mythical bird that rises from its own ashes. The mythical bird Phoenix is known as the sacred firebird. Phoenix constellation is easy to see for anyone in Australia and South Africa during southern hemisphere summertime, but it generally can't be observed by anyone living north of the 40th degree parallel, which is about where I grew up. But here in Texas, yeah, you can see it. It lies pretty low in the sky for us here north of the equator. But most of the constellation is above the horizon here in North Texas. Phoenix is the 37th constellation in size, occupying an area of 469 square degrees. Anka, or Alpha Finis, how do we pronounce the genitive word of Phoenix, is the brightest star in the constellation. Alpha is a spectroscopic binary, approximately 85 light years in distance. The system has the combined stellar classification of K03b and a combined apparent magnitude of 2.377. The two components in the system orbit each other in a period of 3,848 days, or about 10.5 years. The primary star has a spectral type that indicates it is an orange-red giant. Beta Phoenix belongs to the spectral classification of G83 variable, and it's a visual magnitude of 3.32 and is approximately 198 light years distance from the solar system. It is a binary star. It's composed of two class G8 yellow giants with an apparent magnitude of 4.0 and 4.1. The two combined stars orbit each other with a period of 168 years. Slide master, slide number 21, please. Robert's Quartet is a compact group of galaxies in Phoenix, approximately 160 million light years away from our sun, with a combined visual magnitude close to 13. The galaxies in the group are NGC 87, 88, 89, and 92. They are located within an area spanning about 75,000 light years. The four galaxies are in the process of colliding and merging. They were the first discovered by the English astronomer back in the 1830s by John Herschel. Slide master, slide number 22, please. And one more object in Phoenix. The Phoenix cluster is one of the most massive galaxy clusters known. It is showing star formation activity at its highest rate ever recorded in a galaxy cluster, with the recent creation of 740 solar masses per year. The cluster also is emitting more X-rays than any other known massive galaxy cluster. There are a supermassive black hole at the core of the system that is growing very rapidly and expanding at approximately a rate of 60 solar masses per year. Currently, it is about 20 billion times the mass of the sun. That's a lot of mass for a black hole. And this is KF5JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide master, slide number 23. All those objects are pretty interesting. There's a few more Astronomical League observing program objects and the constellations of Sculptor, the Sculptor's Workshop, and Phoenix, a very special bird. I've just given you a sampling of a few of those objects. The Astronomical League has, at last count, 77 different observing programs, most of which have about 100 objects. Now, if you observe just 10 different objects in an observing program each month, then you can earn an observing certificate and a pen from the Astronomical League in about a year. Slide master, slide number 24, and that is Miss Carolyn's Constellations of the Week, Sculptor in Phoenix. I want to thank my friends Dave Hutchinson and Dennis Harwell for the research and words on deep sky objects that I use, borrow, and steal for every Skynet. I also at times use the website constellation-guide.com for information. Now, next time we'll take a look at Cassiopeia, the Queen. We've heard her story before, but we'll get back to that story next week. And this is KF5JHA, sending it back to our net control 73, everyone. Have a great night and a great week.
Thank you, Chaz. Next up is space launches for this week. We're running a little bit short on time, so Tom, if you want to, if you don't want to do them all, or just pick the highlights, go ahead, and we'll see how much time we have left. K5 ICX, go ahead.
Yeah, sure thing, Brenda. Tonight we have a launch. Of course, we had the big launch this morning of the Starship, which managed to get to orbit. The Starship managed to get just to orbit, but failed and has apparently exploded, as did the first stage. But the first stage did successfully get the vehicle on its way to orbit, so the second stage of the Starship itself could actually head to orbit. Pretty spectacular. There's some video over at SpaceX.com. You can go ahead and watch that and see if you missed it this morning. Tonight we have Falcon 9 launch, Starlink 7-7. That's from Vandenberg Space Force Base at SLC-4E. There'll be another batch of Starlink V2 mini internet satellite stage boosters to land on a drone ship called Of Course I Still Love You in the Pacific Ocean. We have on November 28th the Electron launch, the Moon Gold God Awaken. This will be Launch Complex 1 from the Haya Peninsula in New Zealand. The Rocket Lab Electron rocket will launch the TPS-SAR-5, also known as Tsukuyomi-I, or one, I guess, the Japan-based Earth Imaging Company, the Institute for Kusu Pioneers of Space, or IQPS. This is the 42nd flight of the Electron rocket, and it's the first since the launch failure in September. Rocket Lab was nicknamed the mission the Moon Goddess Awaken. Then we have on November 13th, wait a minute, I'm sorry, that was updated. This will be determined. This will be December launch of Falcon Heavy from Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center. The rocket will launch the USS F-52 mission for the U.S. Space Force. Falcon Heavy will launch an unspecified military payload on this mission. We have another launch of Zon 3. This will be from Cape Canaveral. The Falcon 9, again, will launch a much-delayed small geostationary satellite for the Swedish broadband internet provider Ovzon. Originally scheduled to launch on the Ariane 5, the satellite was moved to Falcon 9 due to delayed manufacturing. We have, going into December, I think I will end it on this one, December 24th, from SLC-41, Cape Canaveral, United Launch Alliance Vulcan Centaur rocket will launch on its inaugural flight with the Peregrine commercial lunar lander Astrobotic. The Peregrine robotic lander will carry multiple experiments, scientific instruments, and technical demo payloads for NASA and other customers. The mission will also launch 2 prototype satellites for Amazon's Kuiper broadband constellation. The Vulcan Centaur rocket will fly in the DC-2S configuration, which with 2 GEM 63XL solid rocket boosters, the short-link payload fairing, and 2 RL-10 engines on the Centaur upper stage. All right, Brenda, I'll end there. You can go ahead, I guess, with your next segment. This is KE5 ICX.
Thank you. Yes, this is recent astronomical discoveries. This article tonight is fairly short, so maybe we can get through in time. Title is Using Eclipses to Calculate the Transparency of Saturn's Rings. A Lancaster University PhD student has measured the optical depth of Saturn's rings using a new method based on how much sunlight reached the Cassini spacecraft while it was in the shadow of the rings. The optical depth is connected to the transparency of an object, and it shows how far light can travel through that object before it gets absorbed or scattered. The research, led by Lancaster University in collaboration with the Swedish Institute of Space Physics, is published in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society. The NASA ESA Cassini spacecraft was launched in 1997 and reached Saturn in 2004, carrying out the most extensive survey of the planet and its moons to date. The mission ended in 2017 when Cassini plunged into the Saturnian atmosphere after diving 22 times between the planet and its rings. Lancaster University PhD student George Zaistoros, under the supervision of Dr. Chris Arridge, analyzed the historic data from the Langmuir probe on board Cassini, an instrument that was measuring the cold plasma, i.e., low-energy ions and electrons in the magnetosphere of Saturn. For their study, they focused on solar eclipses of the spacecraft. Periods where Cassini was in the shadow of Saturn are the main rings. During each eclipse, the Langmuir probe recorded dramatic changes in the data. George said, as the probe is metallic, whenever it is sunlit, the sunlight can give enough energy to the probe to release electrons. This is the photoelectric effect, and the electrons that are released are so-called photoelectrons. They can create, though, as they have the same properties as the electrons in the cold plasma around Saturn, and there's not an easy way to separate the two. Focusing on the data variations, we realized that they were connected with how much sunlight each ring will allow to pass. Eventually, using the properties of the material that the Langmuir probe was made of and how bright the sun was in Saturn's neighborhood, we managed to calculate the change in the photoelectrons number for each ring and calculate Saturn's ring's optical depth. This was a novel and exciting result. We used an instrument that is mainly used for plasma measurements to measure a planetary feature, which is a unique use of the Langmuir probe, and our results agreed with studies that used high-resolution imagers to measure the transparency of the rings. The main rings, which extend up to 140,000 kilometers from the planet, but have a maximum thickness of only 1 kilometer, are to disappear from view from Earth by 2025. In that year, the rings will be tilted edge-on to Earth, making it almost impossible to view them. They will tilt back towards Earth during the next phase of Saturn's 29-year orbit and will continue to become more visible and brighter until 2032. Professor Mike Edmonds, the president of the Royal Astronomical Society, added, "It's always good to see a postgraduate student involved in using space probe instrumentation in an unusual and inventive way. Innovation of this kind is just what is needed in astronomical research, and an approach which many former students who are in a variety of careers are applying to help address the world's problems." All right, next would be these are upcoming visible satellite passages. Tom, do you want to go over any of these, KE5ICX?
Yeah, we can do that. It's we still got time, so yeah, I'll be happy to do so. So we have the International Space Station, in case you hadn't heard about it. Tony mentioned it, I think it was last night, that the International Space Station, during a recent spacewalk, one of the astronauts lost a tool bag that is drifting just outside the space station, and it can be seen with a pair of binoculars. Unfortunately, I don't have any good passes for you right now, so nothing on ISS, so you'll have to keep your eyes out for something coming up over the next few days, or look very close on the horizon. At any rate, do so if you get a chance. I do have some good passes to Tiangong, the Chinese space station, with 3 tachinauts on board. There are several passes there. November 19th has a good pass, minus 1.4 magnitude, out of the southwest at 1811 in the evening. You'll reach its highest point at 1841 at 41 degrees out of the south-southeast, and it'll fall to the east at 1816. November 20th, minus 1.7 magnitude, 1847, a little later, out of the west-southwest, reach its highest point at 51 degrees at 1815, and it'll fall to the north at 1850. Then finally, the best pass that I can give you is November 21st, minus 2.1 magnitude at 1746 in the evening. Yes, 546. It's dark at 546 now. It'll reach its highest point at 1749 at 83 degrees, and it will fall to the east-northeast at 1752. We also have, November 22nd, minus 0.9 magnitude at 1822. It will reach its highest point at 1825 at 32 degrees, the north-northwest, and it will fall to the north-northeast. Next up is the Hubble Space Telescope. It has 3 decent passes coming up. We have November 25th, 1.9 magnitude at 1833 out of the southwest. Reach its highest point at 1837 at 33 degrees south-southeast, and will fall at 1839 to the east-southeast. November 26th, next good pass. This one's 1.8 magnitude at 1817. Out of the west-southwest, reach its highest point at 1820 at 35 degrees, and it'll fall to the east-southeast at 15 degrees. And then finally, November 27th, 2 passes. Best one's 1.8 magnitude at 1800. That's at 6 o'clock in the evening. To reach its highest point at 38 degrees at 1804, and it'll fall to the east-southwest at 1808. That's it, Brenda. Back to you, KE5 ICX.
Thank you, Tom. Do we have any final check-ins?
POD 5, BPX, Whiskey Delta 5, Baker Papa X-ray. Bobby?
Okay, I think that was Whiskey Delta 5, Bravo Papa X-ray. Bobby, correct me if I'm wrong.
Got it right. No correction.
Thank you. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up now. We had 22 hands participating on the air. Thank you to all who checked in this evening. We hope you'll join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky is never the limit. We are always looking for net control stations for this and all other DARC nets. If you'd like to try your hand at this, contact any of the net controls by sending an email to nets@w5sc.org. You can follow topics and discussion about this net and astronomy in general on Facebook and Twitter, as well as our audio and video streams, video archives, and other useful Internet resources by going to w5fc.org at the conclusion of this net. Until next Saturday night, this is WB50ZL, Brenda. I'll be closing the net at 10:27 p.m. local time and returning the repeater to normal amateur use. 73, everybody, and enjoy the evening discovering the universe. But wait, there's the Afterglow movie coming up. Tom, what time do we want to start that? KE5 ICX.
I'm completely operational, and all my circuits are functioning perfectly.
Come on back. Afterglow movie net. 2010, the year we make contact. KE5 ICX.
Thanks, and see you in a few.
while you were announcing the break, you doubled with Hal, a quote from 2010, the year we made contact, in V5F.
That darn Hal. All right, we'll see you in 5. Okay, kids, it's time for the Afterglow Movie Net. This is KE5ICX. I think I'll be your net control this evening. We'll be talking about a decent movie for a change. Everyone was so relieved that we actually had an opportunity to do something that was watchable with a script and acting and special effects, everything, all in one film. And it's science fiction, no less, rather than whatever the heck we've been watching over the last month or so. So if you're chomping at the bit to talk about something that was halfway decent, tonight's your night. So here we go. Let me tell you a little bit about the movie. In 2010, which is the preferred way to pronounce it, 2010, the year we make contact, and sometimes abbreviated on screen as simply 2010, is the 1984 American science fiction film written, produced, directed, and shot by Peter Hyams. It is a sequel to Stanley Kubrick's epic 1968 2001: A Space Odyssey, and is based on Arthur C. Clarke's 1982 sequel novel 2010 Odyssey 2. Film stars Roy Scheider, that guy, Helen Mirren, Bob Balaban, and John Lithgow, along with Keir Dullea and Douglas Rain of the cast of the previous film. In case you didn't see the movie or you just need a refresher, this is the plot. 9 years after the failure of the Discovery 1 mission to Jupiter in 2001, in which the crew of 5, including Mission Commander Dave Bowman, were lost, an international dispute causes tension between the United States and the Soviet Union, while both nations prepare space missions to determine what happened to Discovery. The Soviet spacecraft, the Leonov, will be ready a year before the American Discovery 2, but only the Americans can reactivate the ship's sentient computer, HAL 9000, thought to be responsible for the disaster. Upon learning that Discovery will crash into Jupiter's moon, Io, before the American mission can reach it, NASA persuades the Soviets to include Dr. Haywood Floyd, Discovery's designer Walter Kurnow, and HAL 9000's creator, Dr. Chandra, on their mission. Arriving at Jupiter, the crew detects chlorophyll on Jupiter's icy moon Europa, moving toward the sun at a rate of about 1 meter per minute. The probe sent to investigate is destroyed by an energy burst, which the Soviets believe to be an electrostatic buildup, but which Floyd suspects is a warning to stay away from Europa. Finding a Discovery adrift in orbit over Io, Kurnow reactivates the ship, and Chandra restarts HAL. Cosmonaut Max Brailovsky investigates the nearby giant monolith where Bowman disappeared, but his EVA pod is destroyed by a burst of energy. On Earth, Dave Bowman, now an incorporeal being, appears through his former wife's television to say goodbye, telling her that something wonderful is going to happen. He then visits his comatose mother in a nursing home. She briefly awakens, delighted by her son's presence, as Bowman gently brushes her mother's hair. After he departs, Mrs. Bowman dies peacefully. Chandra discovers the reason for HAL's malfunction. The National Security Council ordered HAL to conceal information about the monolith from the Discovery's crew and programmed him to complete the mission alone. This conflicted with HAL's programming of open, accurate processing of input down. With Bowman and co-pilot Ryan Poole successfully activating the malfunctioning computer, HAL concluded that the human crew was endangering the mission and terminated them. Although the NSC's order bears his signature, Floyd angrily denies having known of it. Back on Earth, the United States and the Soviet Union are on the brink of war. The Americans are ordered to leave the Leonov and move to the Discovery with no further communication between crews. Both ships plan to leave Jupiter in several weeks' time, but Bowman appears to Floyd and says that everyone must leave within 2 days. Floyd confers with the skeptical Soviet Captain Tanya Kurbuk, and the crew agrees to cooperate on an emergency departure. The monolith suddenly disappears, and an ominous black spot appears on Jupiter's atmosphere. Neither ship has the fuel to reach Earth if they leave alone ahead of schedule, so the ships are docked together and placed under the control of HAL 9000. The Discovery's remaining crew. Fuel will be burned to propel the Leonov away from Jupiter. Then Discovery will be undocked and left behind. Hal determines that the spot is a vast group of smaller monoliths, multiplying exponentially and altering Jupiter's mass and chemical composition. He suggests canceling the launch in order to study the changes occurring in Jupiter. Floyd worries that Hal will prioritize his mission over the human survival, but Chandra admits to the computer that there is a danger and that Discovery may be destroyed. Hal thanks Chandra for telling him the truth and ensures the Leonov's escape. Before Discovery is destroyed, Bowman asks Hal to transmit a priority message assuring him that they will soon be together. Monoliths engulf Jupiter, which undergoes nuclear fusion, becoming a new star. Hal transmits his message to Earth. All these worlds are yours except Europa. Attempt no landing here. Use them together. Use them in peace. Free parking on weekends. The Leonov survives the shockwave from Jupiter's ignition and returns home. Floyd narrates how the new star's miraculous appearance and the message from the mysterious alien powers inspire the American and Soviet leaders to seek peace. Under its infant sun, icy Europa transforms into a human jungle covered with life and watched over by, you guessed it, another monolith. And a possibility of a sequel that never happened. Except in the books, they did do that. Okay, you've heard the story. You've seen the movie. And now it's time to check in and discuss said motion picture. So what we will do is, I will take check-ins and ask if you've seen the movie. If the answer is an affirmative, I'll ask you various questions, such as, what did you think of the plot? What did you think of the acting? What did you think of the special effects? What did you think about what others thought? All those things. And if you've got a guess about what the monolith really is, I don't know, maybe a pack of dark cigarettes. I don't know, but you can tell us. All these questions are yours to answer. So I will take check-ins now. If you saw the movie, well, you don't even have to see the movie. You can say you didn't see the movie. You refuse to see the movie. You don't know what we're talking about. You're awake and can't fall asleep. That's okay, too. You can check in on this net. Please come with your call sign, your name, and did you see 2010, the year we make contact. Let's begin now.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike. Tony in Dallas. Yes, I did see the movie several times.
November 5, Bravo, Bravo. Bill in Irving. Yes, I did see the movie. And I was surprised, but it actually was the first time.
Kilo Bravo 9, Sierra Oscar Kilo, Sean in Fort Worth. Affirmative, seen it.
Hello, Golf 5, Bravo Zulu Whiskey, J, no effort. Yes, okay.
And I can't tell you how many times I've seen it since then. NV5F.
Zero, Foxtrot Echo Romeo, Chris in Southeast Dallas, and yes, I saw the movie.
Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima, Brenda in Dallas, and yes, I saw it.
Okay, we got a pretty healthy check-in there. I'm going to need one fill, so listen sharp, everyone. NT5TM, Tony in Dallas, yes, he did see the movie. N5BB, Bill in Irving, he saw the movie for the first time. Where have you been, Bill? KB5SOK, Sean in Fort Worth, yep, he saw it. KG5BZWJ near Rutherford, yes, he saw the movie. NV5F, Virginia in Fort Worth, she's seen the movie many, many times. Now, there was a double in there. I got Chris and I didn't write down where, but he did see the movie. Chris, can you give me your call sign, please, and I'll get you checked in.
Yeah, K0FER, Chris, in southeast Dallas.
Ah, okay, yeah, I can't even read my own writing. So that's K0, is that Foxtrot Echo Romeo? Is that correct?
Correct.
Excellent. Well, welcome to the Afterglow Movie Net. I hope you have a good time. WB50ZL, Miss Brenda in Dallas. She saw the film. And did I forget anyone? And I'll also take Echolin, too. Okay, well, I see one of our regular contributors out there, W5EVB, David, usually brings in some pretty good conversation as well. David, do you want to check in? I see you over on Echolink.
There's Echolink. Yeah, this is Whiskey 5, Echo Bravo. Bravo, David in Springtown, and yes, I saw the movie.
Okay, very good. I have you checked in, W5EVB, David in Springtown. He did see the film. Anyone else want to check in before we get started? Alrighty then, let's start at the top of the list. That would be Tony. He's always the first guy. I think he does that just in case he's going to fall asleep or something. But Tony, NT5PM, you have the helm. We are going to be talking about the plot. What did you think about the plot for 2010 from KE5ICX?
Well, thank you, Tom. Yes, partly I'm afraid I'll fall asleep. Partly I know no one likes to go first. And yeah, I just want to get my comments over with and then listen to people who have thought more deeply about the movie. I recently read an article about the ultimate Hollywood movie cliche. And this was specifically about a series of three very dismal movies that are dismal in three different ways. This was about The Day After, Threads, and The War Game, all about giant epic nuclear disasters. And the essay talked about the plot structures of the different movie and various different Hollywood movie cliches. You know, there's some that we've all seen, like the good guys have to win and the bad guys have to lose. They always try to make it clear with music who those are. And there's another famous Hollywood pattern where characters die one by one until exactly one beautiful romantic couple is left. I don't like that one either. It's fairly annoying and predictable. But there's another one that is even bigger than all these other cliches, and that is Americans just don't like inexplicable things in movies. They don't like it when characters disappear without knowing what happened to them. And it talked about how in The Day After, people live or die, but they don't just evaporate or disappear the way they do in the British nuclear war movies. And this, to me, is a very good illustration of that, because in 2001, the whole movie is, deliberately a little bit confusing and ambiguous. What, the computer did what? Is the computer a good guy or a bad guy? Why did this happen? Is he dead or alive? Reincarnated? Turned into an AI? We don't know. And 2010, The Year We Make Contact, is the Hollywood answer to that. Everyone's fate is very nailed down. We absolutely know what happens to everybody. Some people live, some people die, some people have redemption, but it's just, there's deliberately nothing inexplicable in this movie. I mean, we don't know why the monolith makes Jupiter into a star, but But it's very clear that it does. There's not a lot of confusion. There might be surprise, but confusion is minimized. So it's a huge difference from 2001. And of course, you know, Mr. Turnbull, I can never remember exactly what his name is, didn't work on this, so the special effects are very adequate, but not unique and surprising. The plot is fun and engaging and kind of heartwarming. I enjoyed following it, but it is a much more American movie than 2001. We can follow along. We're not confused. We follow the rising action. It is made to be comprehensible and fun and to keep the audience interested. And I think it does a good job of that. It's such a different movie, such a more American movie. But hey, I enjoyed it, and I bet the rest of us did too. NT5TM.
Well, thank you, Tony. That's a nice and sprite and very, very nice analysis of the film and the film industry as well. Pretty cool. Okay. Next up is Bill, N5BB. Bill has lived in the first film for decades. So, Bill, here was your grand opportunity to go outside and play with others and also see 2010, a sequel. There could be such a thing for 2001. What do you think about the plot for that, Bill, from KE5ICX?
Well, thank you, Tom. This is N5BB. And I somehow thought that I'd seen this movie until I was watching it and I realized I've seen excerpts from the movie and scenes maybe from the movie, but I'd never really sat down and watched the whole thing. Definitely not in the theater and not even, streaming or anything. Or from a CD or a DVD or anything. So I was pleasantly surprised and happy. As with Tony, I liked the movie. I liked the flow of the movie. I liked the appearance of the movie. In general, the acting and everything else. So I found it very enjoyable. I think it was a good follow-on to 2001, A Space Odyssey. As Tony says, it's a quite different movie. It didn't have the same ambition exactly as, because it wasn't made by Stanley Kubrick. This is N5BB. So if you want to see a flow of different things, look at A Clockwork Orange, Dr. Strangelove, and 2001, and then watch this movie. And you can definitely see which movies are made by Stanley Kubrick in his own unique way, and which movie is a totally different Peter Hyams movie, just with totally different attitude toward the movie. I liked it, and I thought the plot was good. This is N5BB. This is Skynet, by the way. Excuse me, this is not Skynet, this is Afterglow. What's after Skynet? What else can I say about the plot? I can say something. This movie was released in the end of 1984. The Soviet Union wasn't really dissolved until 7 years later, end of 1991. So as you can see, this had a lot of Cold War, Soviet Union, U.S. friction as part of the plot, a major part of the plot, and driving a lot of the action. So I guess now, from our view in 2023, we could view it in hindsight as being an alternative history. You know, what would have happened if the Soviet Union had continued and we had gotten to space 13 years ago to Jupiter with a big spacecraft like this? What could have happened in that alternate universe? I think it's here. N5BB.
Yep, thank you, Bill. And I guess this film continued the tradition of things dissolving and disappearing. As we know, in 2001, of course, it would take 2 years even after this film, you know, all the manufactured Whirlpool and Pan Am and who else, even Hilton to a lesser extent, all disappeared. And so we have to add the Soviet Union to that as well. They kind of went out of business. Okay, next up is Sean, KB5SOK. Sean, what did you think about the plot for 2010, the year we make the contact, from KE5ICX?
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. Yeah, no, I agree with the two gentlemen before me. I do think Tony nailed it as far as the difference between the original and this one. I think that was a great point. That's kind of how, you know, pretty well kind of covered the big differences. And that was kind of one of the things that I was going to cover as well, is that just the difference between the two movies, which is hard not to talk about, even though we're talking about the second one, just because the first one was so dramatically different. And there were things I very much loved about the first one, but there are a few things actually I didn't. Even though I loved the film, there's a few things that really bugged me in the first one, and one of those was the pacing. And that's something that this film did very well. I think this film actually had better pacing overall. You know, so I enjoyed that. But as Tony had mentioned, this was very much more typical Hollywood. And that was the side of this movie maybe I didn't enjoy as much. Even though I did very much enjoy this movie, it did feel very Hollywood. It was your classic, you know, a lot more action. You know, you had all your typical tropes in this one. Even though I do think there is some political stuff in there, and it definitely is, I think, better than a lot of the science fiction stuff that we see. I do feel that it fell back into that kind of typical Hollywood thing, and you know, I guess you can look at it as a good and bad thing, maybe. But you know, of course, one of the best things about the original film was obviously, I think, the open ending, because it makes you think about it for weeks, maybe years later. You can still look at it and come up with a different conclusion. So this one kind of answers it, other than what the monoliths really are, or who's controlling them, if anybody. You know, so we kind of get our answers on this one. So I guess it's, you know, if you had any of your own theories about it, then those are probably blown out of the water. You know, yeah, I don't know that if you hadn't read the book that you would ever come up with the whole thing that Jupiter is going to be turned into a sun. So it's kind of interesting. You know, and I think the original film, cinematography-wise, was much more dramatic, and the thing that really made it stick out. This one was just kind of your typical science fiction. Still good, but it was a little more traditional. Now, a couple of things that, you know, I was going to point out, just because that's what we do on here, was, and I'm not a physicist, or, you know, I guess maybe some of you are probably much more versed in this, but if you actually had turned Jupiter into a sun, if it was a mini-sun, it would be much more dense, obviously, than the original planet, and that kind of gravitational pull, wouldn't that actually impact the Earth? Wouldn't it actually potentially pull us out of our current orbit? You know, would it affect us? So, you know, they talk about being a great beginning, but it might be a great beginning for a new planet, but it might be the end for us. Just kind of a thought I had. I thought that was kind of strange. To me, scientifically, that doesn't sound very sound. Their air braking thing was kind of a joke. I don't know that it was really needed in the film, but, you know, yeah, we're going to place some balloons and they can withstand thousands of degrees and slow us down, but, and it never been tested. Would you really send people across space with untested technology? You know, that seems a little strange. And then, you know, why did the monolith actually blow up the probe? the guy in it. It seemed like up to this point, the monolith had been pretty much good to us. Even to the point where obviously at the end, it allows the warning to let us know that we need to get out of there. So it seems like it did care for human life and helped human life early on with its development. So it's a little strange here that it went ahead and attacked that probe, but so that seemed a little off to me. And then also along with the, in the first movie, it insinuated that the monolith actually, every time we come in contact with it, it seemed to push our development forward. In this, instead of doing that, it creates new life from scratch and doesn't help us out. So, so they did change up a little bit kind of what the story meant. Still, once again, it sounds like I'm kind of complaining, but in reality, it's still a great movie. Enjoyed it very much, but just a couple little things that just stuck out to me as I watched it last night. I've seen the movie a couple times, but after seeing it a couple times, you start to kind of pick these little things out. But all in all, still enjoyable. One more to say about the cast when we get to that part. So yeah, back to net, KB9SOK.
All right, very good. Thank you, Sean. And we'll move on to Jay, KG5BZW. Jay, what did you think about the plot for our movie 2010?
Killer Golf 5 Robert Zoo Whiskey. I mean, yeah, it was an enjoyable film. The overarching story, I do have some trouble with. Well, I don't think that I don't know. I've read the book and I've seen the movie at least twice. It's been a long time since I read the book. I think that, like that intro, it talks about the monoliths, except for they're not monoliths, they're well, I mean, it's a monolith when it's. I'm sorry, I'm being dumb and interpreting things very literally here. When the monoliths are multiplying with Jupiter, I don't think that they were really increasing Jupiter's mass, because that would. I don't think Arthur, unless they were also increasing its relative speed too. But like obviously that the way it was described, it didn't seem to require increase in mass. Well, where the heck is that mass being teleported from, or whatever? For some reason, I think it was just that's kind of the magic of sci-fi and whatnot. But I don't know. It flowed fine. The story flowed fine. I don't really see the point of having two stars and a mini star, even though it's an interesting ending. Oh no, we kind of have a problem with. I don't think a super intelligent whatever monolith, whatever they are, it just doesn't seem like something that would actually be that useful, because that could change a lot of things up in the solar system. Hey, guess what? You now have two sources of radiation and whatnot, and just the good light stuff. But I don't know. But anyway, then of course it's a story about eventually bringing peace between two superpowers and all that. That's kind of one of those tropes that just done a lot. And I mean, I guess that's a good message because I mean, heck, I'd rather have something than nuclear devastation. But anyway, there's just not a lot to criticize. I mean, I don't want to say criticize. There is stuff you can criticize, but it's just, I don't know, it is more just the American-style movie, and it's one of those things that, it's an okay film. And it's not better than certainly magnitudes better than the films that we've been watching, but great sci-fi, no. I'll just leave it at that. KG5PG.
Okie dokie. Thank you, Jay. And next up is Virginia, NV5F. Virginia, your thoughts on the plot for 2010 from KE5ICX.
Okay. And for some reason, I guess that was the end of the Morse ID. I heard the squelch. It sounded like the squelch tail from Search City. Anyway, okay. So this is a spiel that has probably been about 39 years in the making. I saw this movie when I was very young. I saw it at the theater. I had seen 2001 or attempted to watch it when I was a few years younger and did not understand it at all, and it was like, how is this science fiction? How is this about? Eventually they got into space, but by then I was lost. So I knew about 2001, and I went to see this movie and was immediately captivated by it because I think it is pretty good science fiction. I'm going to defend the plot at large in that it was based on a book that was written by someone who is considered to be one of the best science fiction authors ever. Now, as far as how the book was treated as a movie, we could indict the movie or Peter Hyams, but he did base the movie on a book, and he actually worked really closely with Arthur C. Clarke when he was writing the movie, and he did get Stanley Kubrick's blessing to go ahead with this. Oh wow, it is the Search City ID. That's weird. Okay, so anyway, all that having been said, I think that in some ways the plot of this it's definitely affected by the times in which it was written, even more so than the book. I think that Peter Hyams definitely brought out the whole U.S.-Soviet conflict. Clarke's book did imply that a little less obviously. There were other things that were de-emphasized in the plot of this, but it pretty closely follows the book. And I think there's other stuff I could talk about, but I'll wait till the next round. But I think that to me, after so many years, and this is kind of was my gateway into the whole 2001 world, because of course after I saw this and was so amazed by it that I saw it 3 or 4 more times, that was back when you had to go to the video store, and there was a waiting list to see 2001 at the video store because everybody had seen this and they all wanted to go back and see 2001, and each video store probably had maybe 1 copy of it, so it was always out, so I finally got to see 2001, and they were running it on the afternoon movie on some of the UHF channels and stuff. So I finally got to see it, but it was really a hard-fought thing to even get to see 2001 back then after seeing this. And, of course, I got immediately obsessed by the whole thing and what 2001 really meant and why Hal did what he did. And this movie actually does what I think is a pretty good job of explaining it, and I do think it is set up pretty well in the first movie. People act like the first movie is such a mystery, but I recently saw a YouTube video that was a bunch of 20-something-year-olds who were pretty smart people, and they were all watching 2001, 3 of them for the first time, and they being, members of the 21st century and knowing mostly life in this century, were figuring 2001 out well before, things were happening. They were totally predicting what was going to happen in a lot of cases, and so I think 2001 is not as hard to understand as, the way Stanley Kubrick laid it all out. He was kind of weird. He did things weird. He was a very brilliant art filmmaker. This movie is definitely more, we like to say American, but it's just more straightforward, and it's kind of an appendix to 2001, and I think the characters are at least interesting. They really changed some things. Like I said, I want to save some of that for round 2. I will say that I have one big plot hole with this movie. At the end of 2001, when Dave disconnects Hal, immediately a video briefing by Dr. Floyd comes up, and for this mission, known only by your HAL 9000 computer, and then in this movie, Dr. Floyd's all indignant, like, I didn't authorize anybody to tell Hal about the monolith. So to me, that's just a big old plot hole. And it makes, of course, it makes Dr. Floyd's character, it makes that plot of him, not knowing what's going on a little more credible. But anyway, I've always had problems with that. But I've always loved this movie, and I think the plot's pretty tight. It's pretty interesting. It keeps you engaged, and I don't think there's any problem with the mass of Jupiter, because Jupiter's mass is essentially the same, so its gravity should be the same. Even if it's more dense, it should still be the same. There are many binary star systems out there, and Clark is pretty good at feasible science fiction. That's why I've always liked his science fiction, because, yeah, there's stuff in this movie that's crazy, like sound in outer space, which they definitely didn't do in 2001. They made this a lot more, like, palatable, and at the time, the special effects were pretty brilliant. The colors on Jupiter were basically based on a lot of the Voyager information that they'd gotten back, and this was nominated for an Oscar for special effects, and I think the special effects were very good, and I think, I'm getting a little bit into round 3 now, but I think the whole thing overall was very watchable, very, easy to follow, very straightforward, definitely focused on the Soviet-American problem, which was the focus of a lot of movies back then, like Tony cited War Games and The Day After. That was on, and this movie definitely brought that whole thing to the forefront, and definitely much more emphasized at the end in the book. The message ends at a Hypno landing there. The movie added, use them together, use them in peace, which, the message there was a little heavy-handed, but at the time, when I was a kid and I was seeing this movie and I had been afraid of things like The Day After and some of those other things, this was actually encouraging, and actually I remember being very moved at the end of this movie and very obsessed with it for quite a while. Drove my mom insane. I bought the book, read it over and over again, carried it around with me everywhere in case I wanted to read a passage. when I was passing time at the end of a class or something, and all my teachers thought I was crazy. What is that you're carrying around with you all the time? Drew pictures from the movie, all the ships, wrote short stories based on these characters. There was actually a Marvel Comics version of this movie that I had, and I loved the plot, and I thought what they did with Hal and Dave was very, just, you know, it definitely turned it into, you know, a much more three-act structure, kind of happy ending, you know, everybody knows why. But then you think, in real life, wouldn't they have investigated why? Wouldn't they have wanted to understand what happened? Where did, you know, what happened to Hal? Why did he malfunction? You know, what happened to Dave when he finally got to Jupiter? Blah blah blah. I mean, it makes sense that they would have, that this would have happened, and the whole thing with Dave being this non-corporeal star child, going back to visit his, you know, his home planet and his mom. I mean, that's all in the book. So, you know, and I think it's a pretty decent book. Some of the relationship stuff in the book and the characters was left out. If, you know, you have to leave some stuff out. But anyway, I'm talking a long time. This is in V5F, and I will try to leave it at that. I've got plenty more to say. Thanks, Tom, in V5F.
All right, thank you, Virginia. Thanks for those comments. And yeah, you were the one that I heard you earlier sometime this evening there. I kept bugging Tom to go ahead and pick the movie. Well, this is a good choice, and thank you for bringing it back to our attention. I think it's a fun film, but I'll save my comments for a little bit later. And next is Chris, K0FER. Well, Chris, welcome back. I know you have been on this net in the past, and it's been kind of a while since we've heard from you, but welcome back. What did you think about the plot for tonight's film, 2010, the year we made contact?
Yeah, I really liked the plot. This is my first time seeing it. I had watched 2001, I guess maybe 15 years ago or something, and it was okay, but it didn't really grab me at the time. The more I read about it and learned about it, the more I came to appreciate all the advances it had made in special effects and a lot of other things. I enjoyed this one. I enjoyed the acting. I thought Helen Mirren was great. Didn't even recognize her as Helen Mirren. A lot of big names in this one. And really don't have a lot to complain about. The only thing that kind of stuck out is when they were sitting in front of the White House, you could hear jet engine noises, which made me think, huh? But all the other stuff I understand is part of the book, and science fiction, I am willing to suspend my disbelief. I enjoyed it. This was so much better than The Wizard from Mars. K0FER, back to that.
All right, thank you, Kristen. I'm sorry that you had to watch that film. Even I wasn't on that net. I was out of town, and I didn't get a chance to see it, and I'm glad I didn't. So kudos for enduring that. Next up is Brenda, WB50ZL. Brenda, what did you think of the film from KE5ICX?
This is WB50ZL. I really liked it, say that. But I did have some problems with the plot. It left me unsatisfied at the end. You know, the first movie had so many, just so many unanswered questions and mysteries about it, and here we get our hopes up. We're going to find out what this is all about, and then the end, it's kind of like, well, they made Jupiter into a sun. What does that do? And you know, Bowman is saying something wonderful. did I miss the wonderful part somewhere that this was going to in some way help the people on Earth? And we still don't have any connection to the aliens. You know, we don't know much about them, and they don't talk to us, and you know, we're just getting it was well done. It, you know, had lots of good things going for it, but the end of it just left me unsatisfied there. And they also never explained why they replaced the character of Floyd. Whatever happened to William Sylvester? If anybody knows, I'd like to know, because I've looked. I can't see any answers to that question. You know, I love Roy Scheider for sure, but I don't know why he was replaced. So, yeah, you know, it really is a first-rate movie on the whole. The acting was so good. The script writing, I did like it a lot, despite my frustration at not getting answers. All right, back to net, WV50ZL.
Okay, very good. Well, we'll move on to David, W5EBB. David, your thoughts on the plot from KE5I6.
Tom, you may leave the lavatory if the green exit light is over the door. If the red light is illuminated, one of the lavatory facilities is not properly secured. Press the stewardess call button to the right of the door. She will secure all facilities from the control panel outside. When the green exit light goes on, you may open the door and leave. Please close the door behind you. That is from the first interior scene of the Leonov as the camera pans across this one panel that I had to freeze frame this last time I watched it, and that was the text. That Easter egg is the 2001 A Space Odyssey instructions on how to use the space lavatory. Now, it's hard for me to find something new in this movie because I've seen it about 99 times. I saw it at the theater when it came out. I have the VHS tape around here somewhere and the soundtrack on cassette. Now, I saw this movie like maybe some others before I saw 2001. And it's still a good movie after all these years with a lot of replay value. It's got universal themes, you know, the political versus pragmatic, practical choices people have to make, the collusion versus cooperation, where you had Kurnow and Floyd prophylactically conspiring against Dr. Chandra in case Hal went haywire. And ultimately, the theme of people of disparate backgrounds working together to achieve a common goal. And the movie at its conclusion has the benevolent message of world peace and kumbaya cooperation, which is all fine and good, but it was achieved only after a cosmic cataclysm combined with a stern warning from the landlord. So, you know, over time, it was a feel-good movie. You know, this was like a medium blend coffee with lots of sugar and cream, whereas 2001 was more like a dark roast, very bold and complex, and probably had people leaving the theater thinking, what did I just watch? But 2010 was very, you know, straight ahead, easy to follow plot, and a feel-good movie, and I'll still watch it again and again and again. W5EBB.
All right, thank you, David. Interesting, and as you mentioned some trivia there, I can provide some here in a little bit as well. Let's see, well, so far everybody has given it a thumbs up, our movie this week, which is a very rare event. So I will go ahead and ask if anyone else would like to join us this evening. Tonight's movie we're discussing is 2010, the year we made contact, the sequel to the movie 2001. If you'd like to join us, you don't even have to have seen the movie. Just let us know you're out there. Please come with your call, your name, and did you see the film? Okay, well, I'll make my comments known then. Let me see. What can I say about the film? Well, first off, I am a huge fan, of course, of 2001, as everyone else is here, and had seen the first film a bazillion million times, and read all the books and the different iterations, and the making of, and all those things. So it is considered a masterful film, and while it didn't receive the critical accolades that it did later on, with people watching it and repeat viewings later on, finally it reached its own and became one of the top 10 movies ever made. Although there's some argument about that, I'm sure, but most people consider it a masterpiece, and Stanley Kubrick's master of making masterpieces. So I think there's no doubt there. With that being said, Peter Hyams had to do something with this sequel and not screw it up. That's essentially what he had to do. How do you make a sequel to one of the finest films ever made, or one of the most iconic films ever made, with an ending that is almost incomprehensible to the average human being? And the answer is differently. And that's exactly what happened. Instead of doing an art house film of sorts, or a really good science fiction film, he put together a science fiction film, in air quotes, call it that. But he also made it an action-adventure, kind of a little bit of a mystery thing going on there, and people call it an American film. Well, I think it's just a film. I mean, Arthur C. Clarke was American, even though it was filmed in, throughout the world, but it was actually filmed in England. But it was an American director, so I'm not sure I could ascribe that. Pop culture, or popular film, maybe, for 2010, sure, I could see that. I do have comments about the overall visuals in the film, but I will save that for that round. The plot worked quite well. Even as a kid, I was okay. Well, I wasn't a kid when I saw the film, but I was a kid for 2001, and I guess it was okay to have the instructional, the cliff notes, if you will, about what happened and why, how, and all of that. But I think if you really drilled down and paid attention to the original film, you would find that out. Kubrick, in this case, forced the audience to think, and I think that was important. With this film, we had to fill in all the blanks for everybody because we wanted it to be a popular film, which it was. It did quite well up against Beverly Hills Cop, and what else came out? Dune was another film, and I forget what the other science fiction film was that came out around the same time. In fact, I think it was in the same weeks. I remember Starman. So, overall, pretty good, entertaining. I liked it. Some of the way the film was produced, of course, is different. Watching it last night, seeing some of the special effects, I can't help but notice that the special effects were not as good as in 2000. That film is so marvelously done in 2001. You really do feel like you're in space. And I think that's an important part of why that film works so well. You were totally engulfed in it. This one, not so much. It was more of a traditional science fiction film. You kind of figured you're watching this, that, here, and there. You had to suspend belief, whereas in 2001, you're sitting there and thinking this is about as real as it can get. And it's a motion picture, and you keep thinking, how is that possible? So the impact is different, I think, overall. The story did move. I agree with everyone else. I thought that was a nice feature. Kubrick has a tendency to make his movies really long. Scenes play out much longer than maybe they should. But you got to remember, he's a cinematographer too. He was the guy who could really be a filmmaker. He wanted you to absorb the denseness of what was on screen. Whereas in the film here, exposition is what counts, and we get told everything we need to know. So you got all of that. So different films. Fortunately, he didn't make a mess of it. certainly trying to be Stanley Kubrick is not a good idea, so he tried to be Peter Hyams, which is a better idea anyway, and he made a Peter Hyams film. So I'm perfectly okay with that. Now, a little bit of trivia. I think everybody is aware of the Time magazine that is shown up on screen and shows Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick as the Russian premier and the American president. But what may have got by you, and I didn't notice this until I read about it while doing the research on the movie, is that in front of the White House, when they're talking to the NSC chairman and Floyd is there discussing what all is going to happen, there is an old man feeding pigeons over to the far left of the screen on a bench. If you look carefully, that is Arthur C. Clarke. He did have a cameo in the film besides just Time magazine. So I thought I'd mention that. Okay, we're going to go back to the top of the list. This next round is talking about characterization. I guess that includes crazy computers too. So we'll start with Tony. NT5TM, Tony, your thoughts on characterization and acting from KE5ICX.
Well, thank you, Tom. I'm getting just a bit sleepier, so I'll try to be brief. I did really enjoy the comments last round about pacing. Yes, that was one of the most difficult things in the original movie and the thing that was done most successfully in 2010. It kept moving without dragging very nicely. I really enjoyed that. The characters were also much more human. One of the most striking things about 2001 is really just how robotic almost everyone seems throughout the movie, how they follow procedures and do the expected things and don't emote very much, and they're very computer-like, really, and that we didn't get that here. Unfortunately, I felt that John Lithgow was perhaps misdirected. I did not enjoy his hyperventilation on that initial landing on the Discovery. That wasn't believable to me. It was. I can certainly imagine confusion and motion sickness, but that constant near panic was, I don't know. I can't imagine anyone not realizing they weren't supposed to do that. But by and large, yes, I really enjoyed that theme of crossing international barriers by working together. That's extremely human and a very realistic thing that people go through. And I really felt the characters in 2010 were far more human and relatable than those in the original movie. Kind of an achievement. Yeah, kind of an achievement. To still keep a science fictional thing while being human and relatable. Especially against such a backdrop of overwhelming mystery and will they tie up all the threads. NT5TM, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Tony. Next, Bill, N5BB. Plot, geez, characterization and acting. Go ahead, from KE5ICX.
Thank you, Tom. This is N5BB. Well, I have an answer for Brenda. She was asking about William Sylvester and why he wasn't recast in this as Dr. Hayward Floyd. I think the main, besides the reason that William Sylvester evidently was kind of difficult to deal with on the original movie, he retired early. His last film was in 1980, 4 years before this film was released. So he was retired, and that was probably the main reason. Plus, they wanted. This movie had a totally different, has been commented on by Tony and others, totally different attitude toward the characters than the first movie, and they needed, I think, somebody with a little different empathy and other different acting capabilities. Let's put it that way. Anyway, Brenda didn't like John Lithgow. I kind of like that. It added, again, this is totally different from the first film, and it added some human interest. He really was scared, and the Russian cosmonaut lady, she was very scared too. And Roy Scheider, as Dr. Haywood, kind of held her when she was very scared during the atmospheric braking. And so I think this added some human interest, and I think it made the characters more empathetic. We had some interest in the characters. Because the director had a different reason, he had a different attitude toward the topic and the characters and how he to play the characters. So I think that's what made the movie different, was how Lithgow was portrayed, some of the other actors, how they were characterized. They had emotions in 5BB. And I like that. So that's, I guess, part of the thing about characterization is I like the fact that they had emotions. We kind of cared about them. And we were very unhappy. We were very shocked, unhappy, and when the cosmonaut died during that mission, he was brave, and he went and did it, and it didn't work. And, what had happened earlier, the fact that he and John Lithgow, that character, had kind of bonded. So I like that characterization part. Let's see. As far as other things about the movie, involved with the characters, I'll leave the special effects and other things later. I think HAL 9000, of course, was a key character and was played, sounded, and looked identical to the first movie, and acted very similarly, I thought. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the casting with Helen Mirren and the other actors. I actually liked the casting. So I guess that's my take on things. N5BB.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And next up, Sean, KB5SOK. Sean, what do you think about the acting and characterization of KB5ITX?
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. It's already been said that the big difference between the original and this film was obviously not the cardboard acting that we got in the original. I think this was very well cast. I think it was definitely, we definitely had a lot of characters in this film. And I really don't have any complaints with any of the characters. I do agree with Tony a little bit. I do think the hyper ventilation scene was probably a little overdone, but it did add some warmth to the movie, which wasn't a bad thing. It was a good thing. And I actually really enjoyed the characters in this. No complaints there at all. I don't know if there's any really particular one standout one, but and actually kind of a nice switching characterization to some extent was even how he went from being kind of the bad guy in the original film, even if he was given bad commands, to now he was actually the hero in this film. He actually was the one that ultimately sacrificed himself so the rest could make it. So that was kind of an interesting kind of a switch in direction there. Turns out to be the hero instead of the bad guy. So that was kind of fun. I do like in this film, too, that they did kind of avoid, even though this was kind of your typical Hollywood movie, we avoided any unnecessary romances. I think it was kind of nice that everybody just had mutual respect for each other. I think it could have been very easy for the American and then the Russian lady for them to kind of show a little romance there, even though I do know he was married. But in a lot of these films, that would have been an easy pitfall to fall into, and they didn't. Instead, they showed respect for each other, which is, I would think, would be much more realistic in real life. So I do like that approach. And yeah, I think it was kind of funny too. I didn't mention the first round, but everybody else has already kind of mentioned it. Just the whole tension between the U.S. and the Russians. Back when this was made, of course, those tensions were pretty real, and so they were obviously playing off the times, and I do think that was portrayed very well in this movie. But then I think it was nice too that they did, at the end of the day, it's like, hey, we got a common cause here. As our government's got us into this mess, let's just work together. And that was a nice message for the time. Kind of ironic, shortly after that, the whole thing, the Cold War thing was kind of over. And it is interesting too that the writer thought in 2010 we would still be at odds with the Russians even after another 30 years. But luckily that did not happen. But anyway, yeah, no, solid characterizations, no complaint there. Solid acting. So yeah, I'll send it back to net. We'll wait for the next round. KB9, that's okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Sean. Next is Jay, KG5BZW. Jay, your thoughts on the acting and characterization. KG5ICX.
Oh, this is some. Oh? Okay, sorry. I can't hear this over the background on my radio. There's something that causes a lot of EMF on the frequency, so but I can ignore that. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. I don't know when the films in Twilight Zone were filmed, but well, I just can't help but see some similarities in John Lithgow's acting in that film and John Lithgow's acting here with hyperventilation. In fact, I seem to recall when we were talking about that film, that's just like John Lithgow being John Lithgow or something like that, but I don't know. I mean, I really don't know how many John Lithgow films I've seen him in. More seen him in sitcoms, and the only other thing I can think of was the Harry and the Hendersons, which I don't recall him being any crazy. I mean, I think John Lithgow was John Lithgow there. He was just let on the hyperventilating side and some other crazy side. But anyway, I almost wonder if there's any relation, just his history was, and then what everybody. I mean, going with some of the other comments about how much more emotion was shown in this film, and I agree, and that is very much appreciated. In fact, I'd still say this is a good film. I just didn't think it's a good sci-fi film as much as I want to say that. There's just, I'll get on those bits, just too many little annoyances. But anyway, I know that the characters seem to appreciate each other and react very sanely, but yet still with a nation and how a person you kind of might hope a person would react, not necessarily, not the Steely-eyed missileman reaction necessarily, although a little bit of that could have been useful for John Lithgow. But no, I do appreciate the emotion and how human everybody did seem, and you know, the I don't. It's impossible to you know, create the greatness of a fairly decent sized book in a movie just because it's just, you just got 2 hours. You can't do much. So it's kind of hard to criticize on that. I don't remember how this were. It has been probably over. Well, I don't know what was embarrassed to say because it just reveals how I'm not the largest consumer of books here. But other than that, I did actually like David's interaction. You know, David Proxy, for lack of knowing what I could call him, even though it was him, but it was him plus a whole bunch more. I thought that was well acted, and I liked how they treated him, you know, in reference to you know, the people important to him. Other reactions were fine. I feel like I'm spending too much time on stuff that, because there's other stuff I can't. I don't know. I don't want to pick at this film, but I want to pick at this film. And I want to have time for it later. So I'm going to ask the next person. KG5ECW.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Next, Virginia, NV5F. Your thought on characterization and acting from KE5IJ.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I mean, I have good memories of this movie. It is a warm, fuzzy place for me in general. It was full of really great actors for the time. It was, back then, it seems like a lot fewer movies were made, so you could have, you know, 3 or 4 movies, big movies were out at once, and that was about it. And they all had the best actors in them, and this one definitely was no exception. The thing that's interesting to me is that the 2 main characters, the human characters that were in the first movie, Dr. Floyd and Dave, Dr. Floyd was treated very differently as a character. His just overall feel of the character was very different. In the first movie, he was this very crisp, business-like, you know, just straight-laced, almost British, you know, kind of generic Western, you know, white dude. And then in 2010, he's more of a gritty, you know, just kind of a little more in your face, a little more casual character kind of person. And then the character of Dave, he was treated very much like he was in the first movie, and I like that because Dave in the first movie, you know, it's talked about how everybody in the first movie is so, you know, one-dimensional, and I mean the only human character we ever really get involved with is Dave, and I think the one of the main places where the young folks that I was watching on YouTube misread 2001 and didn't even see the emotion in it was in the scene where Dave was disconnecting Hal, and he knew that, you know, he was basically cutting himself off from any form of companionship. You know, everybody else was dead, and it even sets up this kind of little dynamic between him and Hal. Earlier in the movie, Hal's asking to look at his drawings, and they're having a little conversation, and Kubrick even gives this hint that they have kind of a little rapport with one another, and there's a lot of emotion, and people act like 2001 has no emotion in it. And I mean, the opening scenes with the you know, with the man apes, that's extremely emotional stuff, and then the scene with Dave having to disconnect Hal was extremely emotional. Dave was expressed some definite, even attachment and even remorse in that scene, I think. But he was a very even character. He was obviously an astronaut. He was trained to be, very, very even keel. And he kept that demeanor, even though in this movie he's going back to Earth. He's more than just Dave now. He's been changed into this, otherworldly, ephemeral being, but he can still take human form, and he's still himself when he shows up, even when he's aging in front of Dr. Floyd's eyes. He's a very, very much, and they did that. That's a kind of a cool thing they did in reference to the first movie of having him go through all those stages like he did at the end of 2001 and ending up showing himself to Dr. Floyd as this star child. I thought that was a neat, and I loved that scene, and I loved the scenes with Dr. Chandra and Hal, and that was all in the book, that Dr. Chandra had this attachment to Hal because he basically designed him and programmed him, and I liked that whole plot, and I thought Hal was treated very differently in this movie. He doesn't have that menacing, sardonic, condescending quality. He's played much more as a naive because he's been completely restarted with that part of him removed. That programming is gone, and the memories of it are gone, and now he really is just like, hey, what's going on? And he was very lovable in this movie, for lack of a better way of putting it, and I was actually quite taken with that whole idea when I first saw this, when I was very young, and I thought the whole plot, which was in the book and it's also in the movie, of Dave being given the reward of having Hal become some kind of otherworldly, companion for him, so that he's not alone. He has someone he can relate to in his altered state. And then the ending with, I thought there was a point to this, and I do think that something wonderful that happened was the peace that was brought to Earth by this big, massive change in the solar system. There's a star born, and they come back. The Russians and Americans come back with this big story. And I've probably seen this movie, easily seen it 99 times, and I actually own the soundtrack on vinyl. So anyway, I love 2010, and I could talk about a lot of the characters, but those are my favorite character things, and I liked the Roy Scheider version of Dr. Floyd, and I liked Max and Kernow's. I liked their relationship, and I think the hyperventilating was very dramatic, and when I was a kid, I thought it was a great scene to explore, how scary it would be to be you're going between these two spaceships, and one of them is spinning out of control, and all you've got are these little jet things to get you where you're going, and if one wrong move and you're you're burning up in Jupiter's atmosphere or something, and then you get on this big ship and it's spinning, and as you get further down, I always thought that scene was just a way to seal that friendship and set those two up, and then make the death of Max very dramatic, and kind of set up a sense of there really is danger here, and we're what do they call it in Ed Wood? They were something in meddling in God's domain or whatever, and it does go full circle, because the life that was on Europa, I think, was kind of like a parallel to the life evolving on Earth, and the monolith went there and gave it a little boost and made a new star out of Jupiter, so that life could evolve the way it did a different thing on Earth, and who knows, it might have come to Earth and helped the sun be just the right temperature so that life could evolve on Earth, billions of years ago, way before it came and saw the apes, So it's kind of setting it up as, the landlord, there's some alien or magical or whatever it is force that's engineering life in the universe, and maybe it's maybe it's just way past where we are, and it's kind of trying to help us get to where it is or something. There's still the mystery at the end, and I like that, and I like the characters, and I like the discussion about, how you can't grow good hot dogs indoors, and I know I have the movie memorized, so I could just talk about all my favorite scenes and conversations, but I loved the stuff at the end with Hal saving the day, and Dr. Chandra trusting him, and being rewarded by that, and kind of being hero himself. So anyway, I'll be quiet now. NV5F.
Yeah, that's okay. No, this is one of those films that people enjoyed, and there's a lot of stuff to discuss. So, no problem. Chris, K0FER. Chris, your thoughts on characterization and the acting of KE5ICX?
I don't have much to say other than what's already been said. Maybe something to point out is it struck me that while on Earth everybody was scheming and lying and there was all this conflict, but all the characters, when they were on the mission, away from all that, were more honest about their emotions, honest with each other, ultimately with Hal. And that kind of dichotomy seemed to be a point that the director was trying to make, I would think. Because being honest about their fears and about their mistrust and hopes and how they realize everything's crazy and that is where connection is found. I believe someone else, was it Brenda or Virginia, was talking about how in the first movie they had a kind of connection with Hal, and in this one they seem to be trying to lean into the connection to each other and contrasting that to the war that was unfolding back on Earth. Just my thoughts, K0FER.
All right, thank you, Chris. And next up, Brenda, WB5OZL. Ditto, please go ahead.
Thank you. This is WB5OZL. Well, this, certainly was an A-list of actors. Some really, really good actors in here, and they all did a pretty good job. Of course, that's partly credit due to the direction, and partly due to casting. Did some more reading about William Sylvester. I don't know why he would retire in his 50s. I just have a suspicion he may have developed some health problems. Why does a guy make a movie every year after year after year after year, and then suddenly stops making them? But we'll never know. He lived quite a while, for like another 10 or 15 years, and but I don't know why he quit. When they say he retired, it just means he quit acting. Did the parts stop coming in, or did for some other reason he decided he had had enough? We'll never know. Hal was an interesting character. This was almost a coming-of-age story for Hal. He wasn't very likable in the first one, and he was a homicidal maniac. But he kind of came around and was a good character in this movie in the end. I liked the programmer. What was his name? The Chandra. I liked his character. I thought was just spot on. He was just perfect in this role. A lot of them were. I agree with Tony. I'm a big John Lithgow fan, but of course, this is not his fault, but I agree that they overworked that scene where he hyperventilated. I just didn't see the point of that.
The building.
You know, you're like, enough already. Let's get on. So, let's see. I think there was a lot of character development, and that characters had some self-discovery or worked out their relationships or figured things out. There was, I think, some growth in some of these characters that was interesting to watch. And the conflict between the Russians and the Americans was interesting to watch too, and how they worked through it. And we have that on the ISS now. The Russians and Americans do not share science. They don't share experiments. They don't have anything to do with each other's missions, other than they eat dinner together and have a good time, and they share their food. So it may always be that way, as long as there are people from potentially enemy countries trying to work together. Scientists, I think, have certainly rise above it, because I think most of them care more about the mission than they ever would the politics, the petty politics that we see so often. Okay, I think that's all I have for now. WV50ZL.
Up is David, W5EBB. David, your thoughts on characterization and acting?
As has been said already, the characters in 2010 compared to 2001 were much more interesting and diverse and human in their interactions. You know, the actors in 2001, the acting was, well, the characters were a lot more regimented, and you couldn't really develop much empathy for them. But certainly in 2010, or 2010, they definitely developed empathy for each other, and I think that was mostly exemplified by the Max and Kurnow pairing. And I'll give John Lithgow a pass, because that was part of the drama of the scene. It was, he had that anxiety attack, and Max was there to calm him down. And that had to be complemented once they got inside of the Discovery. Then there was a turnabout. Then Max, or Kurnow, calms down Max. And so that whole dynamic, I think, kind of had to be preceded with that carbon dioxide issue. The revived Hal, behaves like a Star Trek Data. You know, enjoying working with humans, maybe, kind of wanting to inherit some human traits, perhaps. And you kind of get a hint of that also in the interactions of the Hal in 2001. But because they're both programmed by humans, the AI will always have flaws. But in this case, the short-lived resurrected Hal did the right thing and deduced the appropriate final actions. And also regarding the Russian characters, Max, I believe, is the only one who we know what his name is. Like the Helen Mirren character, what was her character's name? It was Tanya Kerbuk. That was the character name, but I don't know if they ever said it. So we really didn't know the names of these Russians. They were just sort of there. They were sort of background, mostly. Now, the Star Child, you could say, was a character, but you only saw him very briefly, in the vision that Floyd had. But in the movie trailer that I just saw for 2010, at the end of the trailer, the Star Child is shown framed inside the monolith as it rotates in space, the interior depth longer than the outer monolith depth, as though the Star Child were looking through a portal or a window or something. So, but the Star Child was just, it was at the end of 2001, but it was kind of towards the end of 2010, but we still don't know exactly what that was. who that was. But the characters, the actors, the casting was good, and it was well casted for this movie. W5EBB.
Okay, thank you, David. Let's see. I'm just going to make my comments quickly. I think everybody's pretty much covered everything that needs to be done with all the different characters. I thought, too, Al was a more sympathetic character and more interesting, and was vindicated. He wasn't the sinister character that we made him out to be because we explained why. And he turned out to be pretty good. I love the final sequence there where we're trying to determine if he's going to go crazy or cause the mission to fail because of his dedication, either his suspicion or his dedication. Nobody ever really was sure until finally they just leveled with him and said, well, you're going to get wiped out probably. And he said, okay, fine. I just needed somebody to tell me the truth for a change. Don't we all need that? Because I wouldn't want to be annihilated by some sort of star creator thing. That's another story. The Ava Boyd character was good, well played by Roy Scheider. He was well cast in that, I guess, in the sense that he's very entertaining and interesting on screen, and he was rather popular at the time, so it was a perfect choice for him. The original William Sylvester character, I believe I read in one of the 2001 books that he had a little bit of a drinking problem, so he would show up on set a little drunk, as he did in. Apparently, he had like a 5-alarm headache when he did that scene in on the moon base, in the briefing room, the all white wall briefing room. They actually stopped filming that day when they were doing it and talked to him. And Kubrick, I believe, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was him, told him, you're going to do this right tomorrow, or you're never working again. So I'm sure that got out. At some point, certainly it ended up in this book, but rather interesting stuff, I guess. Otherwise, I thought the casting was good. I enjoyed the characters. Yes, you had interchangeable Russians, of course, but I thought overall they were very engaging and interesting, and that's what kept the movie going during the exposition part. John Lithgow is a favorite of mine as well. I like him in everything he does. I didn't mind either. The hyperventilation, it was obvious what was going to happen. It was pretty much telegraphed from the very beginning, and that was echoed from the original movie as well about the breathing. Well, he's breathing rapidly, we're figuring he's going to hyperventilate. He did, so we know that. So overall, I thought it was pretty good ensemble cast. Overall, of course, Roy had a big part, but I enjoyed it. Okay, wow, we've had a lot to discuss this evening. We really get to the meat now, which is talking about special effects. But it is late, and I do have to leave in the morning for work. Not for work, but I have to travel. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and, of course, open...
Repeater, timeout for 15 seconds. Timeout. Timer reset. Repeater enabled.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot that we had gone at after midnight. So anybody who has any comments for this round, please come with your comments.
W5FC.
N5BB.
NV5TDB.
V5VGW.
Okay, this is who I have. I've got N5BB, NV5F, W5EBB, and KF5BZ, or KG5BZW. So we'll go in that order, and as you can tell from my port example, you're going to have to drop carrier a couple of times when you speak, because we're no longer on the repeater network format.
Out too. So quickly, I thought the special effects were fine for a 1984 movie. This is 39 years ago, and I really was happy with the special effects and the look of the spacecraft and space and everything. And Jupiter, I really like Europa and Io. You will notice that the Pioneer and later the Voyager spacecraft had gone by, and especially Voyager gotten some really good photographs of Europa and Io, and they knew about the volcanoes on Io and the icy Europa, and so that was shown off very well in this movie. I really appreciated that. It was the only movie I can think of that's really got this neat scientific, view of those two moons of Jupiter. So I thought that was really cool. Made it, hard science there. That's all I got. Good night. N5BB clear.
Hi, thank you, Bill, and thanks for your comments this evening. NB5F, Virginia, go ahead.
Okay, well, I know that the special effects in 2001 are much lauded, and even now they generally hold up, and the style of Kubrick is that very realistic style of depicting space. There are a few moments when that drops out for a little while, especially inside the Discovery, but overall the exteriors are all just amazingly crisp and realistic, with very stark lighting and very quiet. This is definitely a lot more audience-friendly in that way. But I think the point was to make it different from the first movie and not make it stark and make it like, we do have all this science, we have all this information about the colors of Jupiter, and we've had close-up photos of it now. We can actually, so they may have gone what some people might consider a little overboard with some of that, and some of the implausible sound effects in outer space, which you're not going to hear air braking, or you're not going to hear, a latch clicking shut, or jets firing, control jets firing, or any of that. But overall, I think the special effects of it were great. Another noteworthy thing is that the Leonov exteriors and interiors were designed by Sid Mead. He worked on a lot of stuff, a lot of movies around that time, and he also worked on Short Circuit, which we did watch earlier this year, and the music was written by David Shire, who also wrote the music for Short Circuit, and he was, at that time, it was a little cutting edge to do an electronic soundtrack, or a hybrid soundtrack that sounded not cheesy, and David Shire was definitely able to do that here and in Short Circuit. So there's tons of weird factoids I could, just blather about in this movie, but it is one of my all-time favorites, and I'm not as geared towards watching it as I once was, but it was nice to watch it again. I usually watch it a couple times a year now, and it's familiar, and it's a little bit dark, kind of dark in places, and not as not maybe but it's, for what it is, it's actually pretty positive and easy to watch and easy to follow and easy to like and easy to go back and watch again. And I'm glad we watched it, and I think we had a nice crowd, because it's always fun to have just a good movie. They're a lot easier to watch. In V5F.
Thank you, Virginia, and I agree. W5EBB, that would be David. David, your final comment?
All right, thanks, Tom, for running the net. You know, when you go back and watch these movies from the 80s, it's a little disappointing that the things that were expected, like routine space travel, going back to the moon, going to Mars, you know, the science even of the day would have predicted by, 2023 that we would have almost been there or done that, But I think the most disappointing thing is the U.S. has not adopted the metric system. And there's a scene in this movie, it's the hospital room of Jesse Bowman. The doctor asks what her temperature is, and the reply is 39.5. Not Fahrenheit, not Celsius, just 39.5. So I think Arthur C. Clarke expected the U.S. to be on the metric system completely by now, but we're not. W5EBB.
Yeah, well, we have an American audience we got to relate to, or we just what difference does it make? Temperature's temperature, right? It's all the same. It all comes out in a wash. All right, next KG5BZW. Jay, your final comments.
This is KG5BZW, and I hate to be the last because there are a lot of things. I thought the special effects generally were good. I should probably have picked a few things I really liked about it, but I think Inside BB has probably said a number of them. Even in between, that whole sequence of getting oh crap, I forgot the space crap that was like Discovery. That was it. Under control. That was pretty nice. The things that make me say that this film is not a great science fiction film are just there's a number of little things, but just they're still things. Let me reset. Okay, I guess, I had four things I was going to say, but there's three I just kind of just annoyed me that I think really be said. For one, I wish they had kept the dimensions of the monoliths consistent. There's at least one place it was not 1 by 4 by 9. It was like a very thin plate. Not very thin. It was had to be thick by.
W5.
So it was more like door shaped than 1 by 4 by 9. And there's stuff like the rocketry, when they use the boost thing. Well, you gotta boost. You gotta put your thrust under vectorized motor. Thrusters. Not motor. I don't know what it is. But even then, if it was vectorized, it wouldn't have quite proceeded straight like it did. And I don't think the Russian ship would have had. If it was proceeded straight like it did, it still needed to have a downward force so that at a certain point, so that it doesn't, flip-flop. Stuff like that, I don't think it was really accounted for, maybe because, maybe I'm just being, a little noisy a new engineer wannabe or whatever, but, if you've ever done any, anyway. And then there's the other thing that, like, even when the two were crashed together, you had the rotate section of the Russian ship, which provides the gravity, the gravity, quote gravity. in the original 2001, you really got the sense of everything being in space. You did not get that here. They just, I mean, besides the outdoor, they spent all their, we're in space on that outdoor scene, which was good, but, or some of those outdoor scenes, they were good, but, you know, it doesn't, you know, and outside of a spaceship, you still got to provide gravity inside and whatnot. And I know it was not even necessarily perfect in 2001, but here it is. I felt like I don't know. It was kind of disappointing. Let's just put it that way. I think it covers the three things. But, I mean, the music and everything else, you know, there's a lot of wonderful aspects of the film, but goodness, there's just too many. You know, I could probably pick more, but we got to get going. KQ5 ECW.
All right, thank you, Jay. I'll just add my final 2 cents to this, and then we'll call it done. I'll tell you what next week's movie is. I found on the special effects part they're a bit dated. 2001 is iconic in the sense that it looks as modern today as it did when it came out in 1968. It just looks great. We've got the pads. We've got the, you got almost the Apple Store look, I guess, with the white, pristine, the circles, the very, very bright look and all of that. They did recreate some of that in 2010. However, the very clean screens, the iPod stuff was not there. There was just these big CRT clunky displays, vacuum tubes and everything. Even then, I think we had figured out that we were graduating to something more modern than that. But that's what they had. They even went so far as in Kurnoff, or Chandra, the computer guy, has this big, huge CRT screen in his office. That makes no sense today. Even then, it made no sense. So I thought that was a bit limiting in how it was handled. However, with that being said, I thought the film was executed fine, and it was entertaining as a regular science fiction film. It fit in with the genre quite a bit, and what you would expect in 1984, 3, or 2, or any of that time frame, and everything about it. If I opened my eyes and watched the film for the first time, I'd say, it's done in the 1980s. It looks like it. 2001, I look at it, and if I had never seen the film, I'd say it was done today. Or it just looks that good. But that's the way it is, and if we're going to compare them, we compare there. Okay, that's it for me and for everybody else, I think. Next week's movie is, and I've got to find the link again, I'm checking it here, it'll be Nova. Now, there's a lot of movies that have been called Nova. This one is from 2022, science fiction film, hour and 20 minutes long, so it shouldn't be too bad to watch. It looks like it's not terrible. We'll see, as androids in it and some other stuff. So we'll see how it all goes. Check your local listings. I'll send out the information probably tomorrow morning before I get out or while I'm on the road. Thank you all. It was fun, and it was a very enjoyable discussion and fun to watch a movie that we actually enjoyed. I hope this one, it won't live up to it, but it'll probably still be kind of interesting. Stay 7-3 everybody. Have a good evening. We'll catch you again this time next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. This is KE5ICX. I am now clear. Bye-bye.